you want me to. I'm so twisted, you're addicted. I feel your pain, 'cause you want me to. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so bad for you. 'Cause I can't give you everything you want. Make you feel I'm so good for you. Love being bad for you. 'Cause I can't give everything you desire. So close the doors, let me in, let me taste the darkness in you. No one serves me like you. You ask me to slay you, to burn you, to haunt you, so you feel. So do you feel me now? I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so bad for you. 'Cause I can't give you everything you want. Make you feel I'm so good for you. Love being bad for you. 'Cause I can't give everything you desire. I'm so bad for you. I'm so bad for you. I thought I told you once, but I'll remind you. There's certain things you're not supposed to do. I saw you in my dreams and you were falling. No way to know if it will all come true. Let this be a war. I want it. I challenge you, I challenge him, I challenge everyone, I am a king. I challenge statuses, I challenge me. Step to my game, you got no time to sleep. I run in the wind, I run in the snow. Outwork them all, best expect me to blow. I've tasted the low, I've tasted the high. Best I ever did was to not give it time, I just stayed on my grind. What you gonna do when they come for you? We just go hard. What you gonna do when you lose out? You just go hard. What you gonna do when they come for you? We just go hard. What you gonna do when you fall down? You just go hard. 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 I challenge you, I challenge him, I challenge everyone, I am a king. I challenge statuses, I challenge me. Step to my game, you got no time to sleep. I run in the wind, I run in the snow. Outwork them all, best expect me to blow. I've tasted the low, I've tasted the high. Best I ever did was to not give it time, I just stayed on my grind.
Standing in a crowded room, but it feels so empty. I'm haunted by my thoughts of you, and it's killing me, killing me. I'm trying hard to see the light, but the dark knows me by name. I shout your name into the night, 'cause every day I wanna be with you, I wanna be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. And I know it's all my fault. I feel the guilt and the shame. Tried to make a deal with the devil, but he just turned me away. So what can I do to get back to you? I run through the fire and bathe in the brimstone. Visions of your face, it keeps me away. I have no peace, this pain won't leave me alone. No, I'm trying hard to see the light, but the dark knows me by name. I shout your name into the night, 'cause every day I wanna be with you. to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, you know what it is. Hey, we doing it big. Look up, there is no limit, no, we cannot settle for this. Yeah, can't stop, nah, won't stop. Yeah, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch. I had to deal with the cards dealt, hey, when no one's helped. When it's time for action, headlines and captions. Just imagine all of the hours that I put in running and gunning the passion. All of them clap, big applause. Wish I could pause all their reactions. Ooh, we know I never had a losing streak. I know you see what adrenaline's doing to me. I've been kicking game Bruce Lee. You ain't in the game too weak. Make them feel the pain too deep. Tell them get out the kitchen, you can't take the heat. Hey, what I'm doing, hey, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, can't stop, nah, won't stop. Yeah, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch. Yeah, you know what it is. Hey, we doing it big. Look up, there is no limit, no, we cannot settle for this. Yeah, can't stop, nah, won't stop. Yeah, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch. We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just trying to maintain. Y'all don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. Think you gon' beat me? Good luck, that's a long shot. Got the ball, full field ahead, I ain't gon' stop. If I ever fall, I'ma still end up on top. Right now, I'm feeling like everything that you're not. If I was you, I would probably feel the same way. Winning in my blood, something that I can't change. If I was you, I would probably feel the same way. We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just trying to maintain. Y'all don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just trying to maintain. Y'all don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. Gotta be in first place, second just the first to lose. Working in the gym, taking shots, I'm trying to perfect my moves. Early bird gets the worm, I don't got time to snooze. I'm not in the fray, but every year I still pay my dues. Do it for mama dudes. Wanna get a house with a pool and an amazing view, so she could watch her son do what he wanna do. Cause lately I've been ballin' like an alley-oop. We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just trying to maintain. Y'all don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just trying to maintain. Y'all don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. I just wanna lay here. Don't know what I'm waiting for. Don't know what I'm aiming for. I've just gotta feel it. Late night, yeah, my head be spinning around. Yeah, I was once lost, but baby, you got me feeling found. It's time to show 'em how it's done. This is the glow up. Come on, it's time to have some fun. Yeah, that's right. We're gonna break it down. We're giving big love. We're gonna show 'em how it's done. That's right. We're gonna show 'em. I've got to keep fighting. Strike hard, I'm like lightning. It's my life, I rewrite it. Yeah, I'm gonna show ya. Late night, yeah, my head be spinning around. Yeah, I was once lost, but baby, you got me feeling found. It's time to show 'em how it's done. This is the glow up. Come on, it's time to have some fun. Yeah, that's right. We're gonna break it down. We're giving big love. We're gonna show 'em how it's done. That's right. We're gonna show 'em. I know we're gonna make it. We just play the waiting game. I know that we were born for this. I know that we are stronger. We just gotta believe in something. You just gotta believe in us. I know that we were born for this. I've got to keep fighting. It's time to show 'em how it's done. Yeah, this is the glow up. Strike hard, I'm like lightning. It's time to have some fun. Yeah, it's my life. That's right. And I've got to keep fighting. We're giving big love. We're gonna show 'em how it's done. That's right. Come on. This is our time and we're gonna show 'em.
Do you feel what the eyes can't see? You hear it calling way down deep. Trust your heart, it'll keep you true. That's what expects
Don't you tell me about no tears, no pain, no fear, no gain. 'Cause I know what it feels like to touch the bottom. But when the time is just a moment away, living life a second wasted. You make it count so you control your man. No, no, no tears, no pain, no more excuses.
Let this be a warning.
We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just trying to maintain. I don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. Think you gon' beat me? Good luck, that's a long shot. Got the ball, full field ahead. I ain't gon' stop. If I ever fall, I'ma still end up on top. Right now, I'm feeling like everything that you're not. If I was you, I would probably feel the same way. Winning in my blood, something that I can't change. If I was you, I would probably feel the same way. We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just trying to maintain. I don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just trying to maintain. I don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. Gotta be in first place, second just the first to lose. Working in the gym, taking shots, I'm trying to perfect my moves. Early bird gets the worm, I don't got time to snooze. I'm not in the frat, but every year I still pay my dues. Do it for mama dues. Wanna get a house with a pool and an amazing view, so she could watch her son do what he wanna do. 'Cause lately I've been ballin' like an alley-oop. We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just trying to maintain. I don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just trying to maintain. I don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face.
Luscious, divine, I'll empty your mind, 'cause you want me to. I'm so twisted, you're addicted. I feel your pain, 'cause you want me to. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. 'Cause I can't give you everything you want. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. 'Cause I can't give everything you want. Make you feel I'm so good for you. Love being bad for you. 'Cause I can't give everything you desire. I'm so bad for you. Say you're looking, keep looking for it, but you can't find it. Can't find another one to get around with. You try and try, never find someone's life. Keep looking for it, but you can't find it. Can't find another one to get around with. You try and try, never find another me. What is missing when you've been? Tell me something I can hear. Body screaming. You won't admit that you want me close. I know you need, you know I know. When you're with me, you feel it the most on the low, low, low. You say you're looking, keep looking for it, but you can't find it. Can't find another one to get around with. You try and try, never find someone's life. Keep looking for it, but you can't find it. Can't find another one to get around with. You try and try, never find another me.
Hello everybody, it is time now for the summer playoffs here in the PCS, and what an exciting time it is. It means we get to see the LCO players come across, and that's always exciting, of course, brought to you by Riot Games Carry Live. I am Vestian, alongside me will be Shock.
How's it going, everyone? We're going to get this matchup here between Beyond and Bliss, and it's going to be really interesting to see, LCO coming into split number 2. How do they kind of match up against the PCS? Because we all saw the split 1 playoffs, and it was pretty one-sided, you'd have to say. But, looking over LCO, it feels like they've leveled up, and I hope that they've taken some of the split 1 learnings away, especially around the early game and just how aggressive you need to be to compete in the PCS, and hopefully they've improved on those things. On the other side, though, every roster in the PCS had some sort of change, so they're looking a lot stronger too.
They certainly are, and I just want to quickly touch on how sick was that intro. That was
cool.
Awesome. It's always hype, and I think that really adds to the hype. We didn't have the mysterious red hoodies this time, but yeah, exciting time. I think ultimately when it comes to the LCO teams, it kind of feels to me as though it's easier for the LCO teams to come in and read what Beyond want to do than it will be for the Chiefs to do the same against DCG, because I feel like Beyond, when they win, they have one real play style that they play around, which is the likes of the controlled mages that facilitate in the mid, like the Annie, the Nico, and have a look at the, real quickly, the playoff bracket. Of course, we do have that upper bracket first game. It's going to be Team Bliss versus Beyond, and tomorrow will be Chiefs versus DCG. I think, eyes on today for a starter, and I think Bliss do have an avenue into winning this game. I think it will be mostly around draft more than the actual gameplay for a lot of it. Now, that in mind, obviously, you do have to find a way to shut down Betty, because even if you are able to get them off comfort, Betty is going to have a hyper carry AD carry, and he probably is the pound for pound best player on the Rift. I think if you just look at raw, nameplates, you see Betty and you're pretty scared to go up against this guy. So much sort of experience both at Worlds and over in the LPL, so it's going to be a big job to sort of shut him down. But I think otherwise, feels pretty decent. I think Team Bliss can draft out Beyond from what they want.
I think so too. I think that Beyond, like you said before, they're kind of at least of most of the playoff teams, the most one-dimensional in terms of, they pretty much want like a hyper carry ADC. They like to play an aggressive mid-jungle, and then honestly, other than that, they don't really have any kind of keys to winning almost, it feels like. Those are just the very consistent ones. You get a look at their roster on your screen there, so for you guys from the LCO that haven't seen Beyond, you can kind of think of them as like every other PCS team. They do like to be aggressive early, but they always have kind of Betty in the back pocket, similar to Raze in a way, of just that consistent late game carry, to where if things don't go well in the early game, they do have Betty as that backbone.
Yeah, and I want to point out that for this team, Kongyue and Betty take the majority of the resources when it comes to sort of... Kongyue in the early stage of the game likes to get some invades off, and that pulls attention away from mid. 116 often leaving his lane to help with that, as well as Kerez. And then from that, they get an advantage, which helps bridge the gap for Betty to then come into his own. But for the entirety of the split thus far, there has been one glaring weakness in this team, and it is the top lane. So Lakai on the top lane, he pretty much, at this stage, you can't really call him a one-trick pony because he has played other things, but very heavily relies on the Jax. And if you are able to play picks into the Jax that we've seen already from the likes of Driver, like the Gragas, we've seen Rumble into the Jax, and the likes of those sort of picks, he does struggle a lot. He often falls behind and becomes, as I said, the glaring weakness, where you can play through your top laner. You don't even have to. Often you can just leave it as an isolated 1v1 and find advantages that way, and then try and use your top to help the jungler get Rift Heralds and stuff like that, then to propel the rest of your map forward. But I think that is a key to success here for Team Bliss coming into the PCS.
I think so as well. And Team Bliss, they're a team that it does feel like Daystar is kind of the main star of the show, but I do think that each of them does bring something, right? And a lot of this game, I feel like, will be almost up to those supporting members, just because you're going up against some really strong names on the other side of the Rift. If you look at why not, like, I think he plays around Daystar really well, but is he going to be able to stand up in the 1v1 against Kongyue, right? It feels like the question. And then same thing, I think, for top lane. The Kai looks like one of those weaker top laners in the PCS, but is Liv going to be able to take advantage of him? It's hard to say, because we just don't get to see the matchups between regions very often. And I would say that laning phase is generally not LCO's strength, more that team fighting. And honestly, that could even be a good thing, because a lot of the time in the PCS, post 20 minutes, a lot of PCS teams don't have the best macro. They don't have the best team fighting. But if you can't kind of weather that storm, I could see Bliss, maybe picking up a win later in the game.
All right, Shock, it's time. Prediction. What is going to be the series score?
I predict 3-1 Beyond.
Oh, see, I think it's a 3-0 Beyond. I think it's so hard to shut out Betty from just carrying a game. I mean, even the best of the PCS teams weren't able to do it. a lot of the time. I mean, PSG were able to once, J-Team were able to once, but they were like the peak of the peak here in the PCS. And so that does feel a little bit hard to bet against Beyond in this case. But taking a look at those AD carry stats, it is Lemus who leads a lot of the graphs really when it comes to that LCO standing. Obviously, there's one ahead of him in forward percentage as well as damage per minute, but his damage per minute pretty much equal to that of Betty's. A little bit down in gold in comparison, but you can also see that the champions played are the same. Now, I will note that Betty doesn't play a whole lot of Varus. He's played it 3 times. He's won twice as the on-hit Varus, lost once as the lethality Varus. So if you can get Betty onto lethality Varus, I think that is where you can absolutely win. But there feels like there's too much you have to ban to allow that to happen, which means that other things that facilitate the team too well are going to be left open. But, I mean, Lemus, if he's able to get comfort, we saw him succeed for the majority of the LCO. He did really, really well down there in the bot lane. In fact, I believe he was touted as one of the best, if not the best performing AD carry in the league. So there's going to be a big showing from him if he's going to be able to come over here and stand up against Betty. I think importantly, though, in that bot lane, oftentimes you only have to really lane against the 2v2 until about level 5, at which point Keres goes off to the Rift Shield and then starts roaming in the around the map. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the same thing coming in here to playoffs.
It will be, yeah. And something you mentioned there about kind of the champs that might need to be taken away or trying to force betting on the lethality Varus. It was Beyond that took the blue side, which I think is a good idea because I think it's much harder for Bliss to kind of choose those, I guess, more, not off meta, but just not the strictly best champs in the game to ban away as the red side, right? And especially when you're up against Beyond, you know, normally you're trying to limit kind of the carry junglers, the facilitator mids, and it's just more difficult to do that on the red side. They start off, okay, what do we got here? We got some LeBlanc, Nico bans on the red side. I think that's good. I wonder if Annie is going to join them. That's another thing we've kind of seen 1116 play. You're
going to be leaving open Kai'Sa though, and I don't think you can give Betty Kai'Sa unless you have prepared. We've seen it in at least week 6 of the regular season. Zeri was becoming the answer to the Kai'Sa. I don't even know how well that was just more of a composition than it was just the straight sort of laning, but that did become an answer to the Kai'Sa. Now it is going to be that last ban. What do you even ban? Maokai, okay.
Okay.
Well, you left over... I feel like you've got a lot of what Beyond want left open.
Yeah, there's still Kai'Sa, Viego, and Annie, which feel like big power picks for Beyond. Admittedly, it is always going to be hard to do that on the red side, but I think it might have been better for Bliss to, instead of banning Maokai, just ban Viego maybe? And then if they take the Maokai, you know, you're happy to play into 1116 on one of those AD mids. But either way, I guess they've kind of said that we'll at least see what they have to show us here in game number 1. The Kai'Sa Xayah trade is something that we see all the time, and Rel picked up along with it. I wonder if that does suggest Rumble later on in the draft. I guess we'll keep an eye on it. Beyond,
now, is the Rel a flex?
That could be a big yes. I think it should be a flex.
If it is a flex, do you think there's ever a world where you Rakan on 3?
Yeah.
Like you give open the fact that it's a flex, of course. You tell that it is the jungle, but you do also get the Xayah Rakan lane, which admittedly Nort does pretty well into Rakan, but just the power those two offer, even in team fighting, is quite high. And you would have so strong team fighting with that Rakan ult, with that Rel ult. Definitely an avenue I feel like you could look down.
I'd like it. I think it'd give them a really strong team comp, and I also wouldn't be sure if that Rumble would get banned later on. Let's see what gets picked up here. If it's the Jace, I mean, they do get the Jace Kai'Sa, which, you know, very strong combination, but I would actually say it's not really playing into Beyond's win condition. I think 1116 is much better on the kind of facilitatory mages, and I also think that this means that Viego will drop and probably get banned out later on. Oh. Okay, they lock in the Azir. So this is a question mark for me because I think, you know, Azir, it's a really strong champion on the patch, and I think, again, if you can get past that kind of 25-minute point versus the PCS teams, you're in a really great spot. But Azir is noticeably kind of weak in those early skirmishes, which is something that LCO in general did struggle with a lot against the PCS.
And one thing I'm concerned about is because you're going to have that AP Kai'Sa and that AD Jace, sorry. The Azir and the Xayah, especially around those skirmishes, you know, Baron, Dragon, they can't actually interact with the Jace or the Kai'Sa because the range just simply isn't there. And Jace can poke you away with those accelerated shock blasts. Kai'Sa with that Void Seeker. You're never actually able to do anything in return. So you're going to have to find something here that can really get onto these sort of Jaces, the Kai'Sa, to stop them. But it feels like it's very, very hard. And especially because, I mean, maybe that Rel is support, which I feel like makes it a little bit harder because you're really relying on that Hex Flash and your Flash to ever actually get onto those champions.
I think I can agree. So they banned away the Jax and the Lilia second phase. Honestly, not a huge fan of either ban. Feels like Lakai, while he is kind of a Jax enthusiast, I'll say, he hasn't really looked that great in it. And I think the Lilia as well. I mean, I can see it, right? Banning away AP to kind of complement with the Jays. But I wouldn't be too sure that Kongwei would actually pick it up. Now, he has played it once, but I'd be a bit more worried about maybe just AP top coming out. You know, something like Lakai picking up the Gragas and then just still playing the Viego here.
Wow.
Okay, Kha'Zix. So what are we going to see? I mean, I actually like that just because it feels like a anti-carry jungler in a way. Like I said, I think it's a bit more difficult for Kongwei. Well, yeah, I think he is just going to go the Viego. And does this mean AP top? Gragas Viego seems really good.
It does. I am a bit concerned for Team Bliss, though. They really are going to struggle when it comes to those mid-game fights, especially if they get poked out, which with the Kai'Sa, with the Jace, feels like it's inevitable. Now, Gragas is the lock-in.
Ooh.
Bit of a spanner in the works.
No
It's looking
way,
like a
right?
jungle. Well, I mean, do you
It's
really
possible.
expect Lakai to play Gragas? He hasn't shown it all split, so...
Yeah, it would seem weird.
I mean, Renekton... You have a very, very good sort of damage graph here. I mean, damage split on the side of Beyond. Now, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. Lakai off... Honestly, in theory, I think Team Bliss have gotten Beyond away from the things they're comfortable on. But it also just feels like the comp from Beyond is just so strong right here. Big question mark around the Gragas, admittedly. We have not seen Kongwei play at this split, so we're not entirely sure how that will go, as it is the Cassante in answer. Now, I mean, what are your thoughts? Because my immediate thoughts are the Gragas kind of stops what the Kha'Zix wants to do in many ways, because the Gragas should be pretty safe against the Kha'Zix at all times. And then you're just going to be dealing with all this poke come to objectives.
Yeah, it does seem hard. I mean, I guess the way I would see it is I think Bliss certainly outscale in this game, if they can get there. But it is going to be hard. I think they have done a good job of, for the most part, taking Beyond away from their comfort picks. But they have given Betty Kai'Sa, which might be the scariest, champion player combination in the entire PCS. So I guess a lot of it is just going to come down to execution for Bliss and see if they can kind of get this team comp to the 25-30 minute mark, but I think the early game is going to be really rough. I do think they've got a pretty good chance, though. Like, I think no AP mid for Beyond, and Kongwei he's on a carry jungler, but it's not the likes of the Viego, right?
Yeah.
So I like what Bliss have done with their draft. Now it just comes down to, can we execute well enough in the early game to give ourselves a good chance, really? Yeah,
I definitely agree. I think the Kai'Sa, admittedly, for anyone that may be joining us from the LCO, so far, I think Betty's played Kai'Sa 4 times. He's had a 14-0 game, and he's had a 16-0 game on the Kai'Sa. So it's a scary champ to feel okay to give him. So I think that is something to look out for. Admittedly, one of his losses, he had this, what was it, the Duskblade AP build? It was that Duskblade AP build, and he did lose when he went that, but I think we won't be seeing that again out of Betty here. Most likely will be that Static Shiv into straight AP. We'll see, we are now headed onto the Rift for our first game of the summer playoffs here between Beyond Gaming and Team Bliss from the LCO. Team Bliss trying to make up for their last split as we already see flashes forced out of Daystar on that Azir mid, traded for Kerez's. Obviously, hugely in favor there of Beyond.
That's really good as well, especially because they do kind of like to play through mid lane early, even just to kind of get more priority and allow Kongwei to get more done. And this feels very PCS-esque already, getting a flash out level 1, getting a deep ward. Wow, Lakai is 10-0 on Renekton. I didn't even realize. He just never plays it these days.
Yeah, I think he's played 2 this split. He's played 8 games of Jax for reference, so it's definitely... I mean, 10-0. Can't argue against it.
Minions have spawned.
Certainly can't. But this looks really good for Beyond. I mean, already they've got a flash out, of course. They've got a ward in the jungle, and they also managed to defend their own jungle. So I think they come into it definitely with a plan, and Bliss... it's a very slight disadvantage, but a disadvantage nonetheless that they start at.
Now, take me through runes. Do you think everything's all to standard? I think maybe the Gragas is unique. Often we see Dark Harvest actually come out of those jungle Gragases.
Yes, that's a bit different. Honestly, haven't really seen it before, so I guess we'll just find out. Now, I think we should keep our eyes on the bot lane. Betty and Kerez, they often do find 2v2 kills very early in the game, and they also got to start in lane. So going to have pretty decisive advantage down there already, and we'll see what they get done with it. Another ward dropped in the river, so just maybe preventing Kazakhs from doing anything there. And here comes that trade very early.
Yeah. Early push already given over here to Beyond's bottom lane. Should feel pretty decent about that. Why Not's location will be known because of that ward. And
yeah, he skipped some camps, so they are going to know that he skipped those bot camps to be on that red buff sooner. We'll see how the rest of the team reacts to that, see if it changes anything. But just having that extra information does go a pretty long way. Bliss's bot lane. They are going to have a bit of a tough time getting some of the CS, but sort of to be expected, at least in the early stages of this game. Nice little trade there from Liv.
Doing well for himself, certainly. Admittedly, Daystar as well. Not doing too badly up here in the top lane. Ooh, massive trade there comes out of Lakai. Just bullying away as the Renekton oftentimes does. And Beyond getting some vision there. Looked for a second like they were going to investigate the bottom side there of Why Not's jungle. But opt to just place the ward, come back to lane.
It will be both junglers maybe playing around the bot scuttle. And this is one that you feel like should favor Beyond. It's a bit hard for the Azir to get involved in any of these early skirmishes, and I think the Kai'Sa Nautilus should have the prio. Maybe they'll try and take away some of these camps. It would be pretty bad for the Kazakhs if he did get invaded. Although I think Bliss are probably strong enough to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, definitely seems like Kongyue's already on it. Should be able to pick that one up for himself. In fact, he will. Now, if you were in this game, Shock, would you... What items would you go on Azir here? Is there ever the mission Dark Tech available?
Ooh, I guess, yeah. You could do the Chapter Shadow Flame if you really wanted, but I think it's pretty important to have a lot of attack speed this game to chew through the Renekton. I think it's still a Nashor's game. We'll see if they go the Crown. Because that's always the question, right? Because it feels like Crown is pretty useless into double poke, but for some reason they always end up doing it.
Yeah, definitely at least in the PCS.
Well, not a lot of action so far, and honestly, I feel like that does favor Bliss. Obviously only 4 minutes in the game, so can't favor them too much. But I think important will really be these first couple of dragons and the Herald. You know, are they just going to give them away to Beyond, or are they going to try and contest them, and kind of what will that look like? Top Scuttle was picked up for Why Not, and he's pinging on his way to topside.
Yeah, this could be a good look. Lakai does use his slice and dice forward by the looks of things. Liv is getting low, but admittedly, Renekton now without his dash might have to commit his flash here. Liv will not land that knock up from the follow strikes, but it was flash here out of Lakai.
We'll see if that gets punished later on, because it does feel like the Renekton is still going to be pretty ungankable when he hits 6. Although maybe, could be too far up here.
Oh, yeah, nice. Does manage to dodge out on that one. Lived taking his time to recall here. Might lose a couple of minions, but feels pretty hard to stick around, especially now that Renekton has hit level 6. Demolish on the Renekton.
He's even going to get a plate for himself, it looks like. Oh, might stay up. Is that going to go down? Oh, it did go down, and he picked up the gold. So nice little lead there for Lakai.
And it is the Bramble Vest. The cursed Bramble into Renekton.
Now, there are some pings around this first dragon. Interestingly, the Jace did go for the tier longsword. So sometimes you see the Jace just try and rush out the Dirk to be stronger early and kind of delay the tier at least a little bit. And you almost wonder if Azir might be stronger, at least in that isolated 1v1 now, with the Chapter versus those relatively weak early game items. Hook does connect.
Arkia might just have to dash out of this one. Will do so, but not before losing half of his HP. Have the remount back up soon, but with that, pressure over towards this dragon in favor of Beyond. I'm not sure that they'll start it up just yet. Maybe even just waiting until they do have that Dirk online for a more secure time. Obviously Azir with this lost Chapter being looked at, but will be able to dash on out of there. Keep himself nice and safe. Kongyue though, heavy presence towards both the bot and mid side of the map.
And bot lane is quietly building themselves up a nice little CS lead. Lifters come all the way down to mid. Maybe want to try shuffle the Jace in, but is too far back, respecting that move. But it does kind of look like the Dragon won't be picked up before Herald. Oftentimes, if you do start the Dragon this late, you're going to end up forfeiting the Herald just because you lose too much tempo. And Kongyue, he very much values his tempo. He's going to be looking in onto this blue buff.
Oh, Meanwhile, down Bolt side, it is first blood picked up. Kira's getting that one with the last tick of Ignite there. Over onto Arkia.
Yeah, not sure what happened, but I have to feel like it was somewhat related to that trade that happened before. And yeah, I have to say as well, that is pretty much the Beyond classic. You know, they do pick up 2v2 kills in the bot lane against pretty much everyone. Betty and Carries a very strong bot lane. Let's see what happened. So Arkia, he was relatively high HP. Was this the initial trade? Was this just a straight all-in? Looks like the straight all-in. Let's see what happened.
I think.
Just a hook lands on Arkia and he loses
Ooh.
all his health just out of nowhere.
Yeah. And that's the power of Nautilus with Kai'Sa. So much unsuspecting burst coming out of that Kai'Sa passive when stacked up with the CC Nautilus offers.
Arkia's going to be moving up to the Herald, but after dying, he is going to be very low in XP. I'm not sure how close Carries is to level 6, but he's certainly closer than Arkia. And with that Renekton as well, I think it's going to be pretty impossible for Bliss to contest this Herald. Maybe they can try trade it for something though. Even, you know, forcing some bot plates or maybe a dragon could be good. Alternatively, I guess they are fine to scale. But it feels like when you don't have any trade at all that it's not optimal for sure. For now though, Beyond, they'll return to the bot lane and Herald will stay alive.
Pretty substantial CS gap that Betty's finding himself at this stage. Already ahead, and there's about 12 minions crashing. But Bliss taking this time to try start up the dragon. It is going to be traded for the Herald. And honestly, I feel like this is a fine trade. If you're Team Bliss, obviously you want to be able to scale into the game. Get some items onto your Azir, Kha'Zix, as well as, of course, the Xayah. And so ultimately, I don't think this is too bad as long as you aren't going to lose a tower, I really think, for this first Herald.
Yeah, I think it's good. Like you said, as long as they can defend this Herald in some form, it probably even favors Bliss, just giving them an extra 5 minutes to scale later on in their game. But, you know, if you take a look at the gold lead, they are pretty substantially behind already. It's a 2,000 gold lead, kind of out of nowhere. Let's see where this Herald ends up going. I mean, towards top could be a play just because of the plates already taken, but you almost feel like just placing it in Betty's lane is normally the way to go. Like, I might try and nab another plate here, or he could move towards the proxy.
Think of your Team Bliss too. Picking up the Hextech Dragon of all things as a base dragon feels like probably the best one. Feels really good on Xayah, feels really good on Azir. I mean, honestly, it just works well with every champion, really. I think Hextech's one of the best base souls there are in the game. Sorry, just base dragons.
Based indeed. Okay, now Ping's onto this bot jungle. Beyond, they do have priority in mid and bot, which makes it pretty hard for Bliss to defend. And Lemus, it looks like he might be the one getting
He is
punished.
alone. He has Featherstorm. Does have all of his sums too, but this is the Herald going down. Lemus gets caught off by that Void Seeker, and it doesn't even take a dive. It's just 1-1-6, finding that accelerated shock blast, securing the kill, and Arkia walking into no man's land will be taken out as well. Betty picking himself up that one. That's a kill to both of the carries of Beyond as well as plates. Huge find here. And with that, why not losing some of his jungle as well?
Really does feel like Bliss kind of losing out on all fronts here. Maybe why not can get away this Gromp? Don't even think. Ooh. No, does not even get the Gromp as a consolation prize. So a massive swing there that does favor the side of Beyond. And what happened here? I'm not sure how Liv to end up here, but
yeah, I'm not
he's
sure, but he will be going down too. That'll likely be given over to 1-1-6, and it is. 2 kills in quick succession on both sides of the map here for that Jace. And everything's coming up, at least for now, Beyond.
Really is. Lemus, it's really hard, I think, to keep under this tower because the problem is you don't have mid-prior and you also have your jungler in the top side of the map. Even though you're Xayah, you know, a champ that's fairly hard to dive, this is a relatively heavy poke comp from Beyond, and Arkia kind of oversteps, excuse me, ends up getting taken out. Another kill that goes over to Betty. And this is really kind of where that weak early game from the LCO starts to punish you. You know, your Azir is doing well in CS, but ultimately isn't going to have enough pressure on the map in order to keep your side lanes alive. And without that priority in mid and bot, you're quickly looking towards dives and camps taken away that maybe won't be punished to that same level in the LCO. It is that crown for Azir, by the way, which I kind of hate against the double poke. But we'll see. I mean, he is at least ahead in his CS. And he does scale very well into this game no matter what.
Yep, definitely.
Or maybe something else on the bot.
Yeah, Lemus is going to be caught up by that Nautilus ult. We'll use Featherstorm to get away from it. Void Seeker goes slightly wide, but the flash body slam knocks up Arkia. It's another kill there, found from BYG Betty on this Kai'Sa. 2-0-2 now as Why Not in the area. Might have to just,
Nice.
narrowly avoids that hook there from Keres.
He did get out. And even though Lemus survived, he's going to lose so much for this. I mean, Force just so far away from the tower here. And Betty is going to be happy to just collect all these up. And that also comes at the cost again of Wynot's jungle just being invaded. And it feels like now Beyond, and especially after they pick up this tower, they're already at a basically 5k gold lead, only 12 minutes in. And while they haven't given over the first drag, and maybe they do get outscaled ultra late game.
Oh, Magnetstorm will not catch onto Kongyue. Does not have flash though, and Daystar's arriving. Empress Divide will hit this Kongyue back, and it is the kill found there for Azir. A very critical one. Now, Killer Instinct is available, but chooses not to use it there.
Yeah, he cancelled his recall. He was thinking about it. But that's a really good pickup for Bliss. I think Azir feels like your only remaining win condition at this point. Right, the rest of the map has kind of fallen too far behind. And it is a pretty effective win condition, to be fair. I mean, Daystar is probably the best player in LCO, or at least lots of people believe him to be. But being looked at is going to be fine for now. But that's a 40 CS lead in that bot lane. And you got to feel bad for Lemus, because a lot of that is just off his support dying in the 2v2, and then his jungler being forced out, and he's kind of just left to pick up the pieces. And top lane, it's been relatively isolated, but Lakai's pulling pretty far ahead. We're not too sure what happened with that trade before, where Liv ended up kind of in Lakai's jungle.
No, we definitely are not, but Betty now might be able to pick up this tower here. It'll be a first blood tower while Plates are still alive, so you see it there. A lot of gold on this Kai'Sa in general. As Dragon now will be started up by Beyond, and there is no real way to contest this. Obviously, why not up there? Doing his Krugs at the moment means this will be given over. It's going to be 1 Dragon to 1.
Well, and I think the problematic thing about this is you are too far behind to trade anything on the other side of the map. You know, you're expecting if you give up an objective on the bot side that you make some sort of play top. But how can you? I mean, top is really far behind as well, and Renekton's one of the harder champs to dive or pressure just because he's too tanky, really. Herald will spawn in 40 more seconds, and I think that's another objective that Beyond will kind of just want to pick up for themselves. Why not? He's maybe looking for something here.
Does he have the damage to reliably find anything? Okay, they know that Keres is in this bush. Why not? Going to be checked now. Just looks for some damage on the way out. Does find himself some first strike gold. Doesn't feel too bad. Atmas as well, being used here to clear up as much vision as possible.
Top tower already so low as well. Why not forced to flash out? I guess overstayed his welcome there in the river. But Beyond pulling further and further ahead. Mid tower feels like it'll be next. Probably will need the help of the Rift Herald. At least now, some sort of trade can perhaps come out. Daystar's getting to work on this bot tower. But again, it's the strength of Renekton, really. It's a very, very hard champ to trade against. And that's the problem, right? Is that while Renekton does fall off later in the game, in the early game, it basically secures you the first Herald just off its strength alone. And then if you want to start playing away from it later on, I mean, you can see that Bliss are really having trouble getting anything done down here, especially with Betty kind of hovering in that bot jungle. It feels like Beyond just getting everything they want right now. And while Bliss, they are giving themselves time, which is better than nothing. You worry if it's going to be enough.
Yeah, player gold there on your screens. It is Daystar hanging with the pack a little bit, other than Betty, who is miles ahead of anyone. Obviously, you can see it. 2 items. Got that Nash's, got the Static Shiv. Feels really good about himself. Now, 116 has teleported into the mid lane. They're going to use the Rift Herald. They're just trying to get as much as they can. And there is no real way to defend this. Your range is just too short. Going to get at least 1 crash, and Keres does not hit the depth charge. Liv's coming up here. We'll try and find the knock. Massive Magnet Storm finds 3, but Lemus on the back end gets caught by one of those accelerated shock blasts and is going to go so low as Betty picks up his first kill there on Arkia. And despite the massive Magnet Storm, it is another team fight here for Beyond, and they're just getting everything they want.
They do. Bliss, I don't think they have the damage yet to be looking for those sort of fights. I mean, we still got only 1 item to 2 on the 80 carries. And, you know, in the mid lane, Azir doesn't really have any relevant items either, only has the crown. Oftentimes you see the Azirs go for something like the Chapter Nashers just for a bit more kind of relevancy in the early skirmishes, but with a crown, just can't offer anything. And you see that, right? Maybe you would get away with this in the LCO, the ability to kind of scale up. Because admittedly, if Bliss get the chance to scale, their comp does, you know, especially towards that 2-3 item mark, come online pretty well. But the early game of the PCS is just time and time again, it's so important. Not going to let you scale up for free. And Betty, he's working on the Rage Blade. Maybe he's thinking about a 20-minute Baron angle.
Yeah, it is a 7k gold lead here, and we're only 17 minutes in. And so things feel a little bit dire if you're Team Bliss. Now, you do have Azir still scaling up pretty well, but of course, just because of the kills that have gone over, the objectives that have gone over, it feels pretty hard to deal with Betty at this stage, especially on the Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa's such a terrible champion to try and interact with at the moment.
And once again, Betty's Kai'Sa, right? Probably the scariest Kai'Sa to come up against. Oh, Daystar has to be a little careful going down to the bot lane. There's members behind enemy lines here. Carries, he's going to be looking bot. I think Azir should be fine, but this is what really...
But why not? Why not? Still contesting his Wolf. Q's Keres. I think he did manage to pick up the Wolf. Explosive cast. Nice angle there. Will hit Arkia back into the wall, but there is no follow-up damage. It's just Arkia taking off that Gragas ult, and Dragon spawning now in a minute. Feels like Beyond have all the pieces they need to be able to secure this one for themselves.
Yep. They have a lot of priority, of course, in this mid and bot. They have that full vision bot side, and this is where it kind of becomes hard, I think, for Daystar especially, because while he has a lead and probably can pressure the 1v1, he just never really gets the opportunity to push down the side lane, because Beyond just have so much pressure over that mid wave, and you can see just how far Betty is ahead. You know, almost, well, more than 50 CS here. And it manifests in that full item advantage. It's just impossible for Bliss to do anything around it. They need to try and make some sort of picks. I think if you can, maybe pick off the Jace, get the shutdown, it would feel really good. Maybe the Kha'Zix can be the one to do that.
Definitely. Now, Lemus has finished his Kraken Slayer, got the Warhammer as well, but certainly is not going to be the strength in Team Bliss to be able to contest this Dragon, so should be, again, going over to Beyond, picking up their second. It is going to be the Cloud Soul, so not the most impactful of souls, but pretty nice to have nonetheless. And you see, even while this Dragon's going down, Beyond aren't even giving over camps for free. Got Lakai pressuring over at the Raptors, and it's just really hard at this point for any of the three members that really need resources to get any. Why not really struggling to get access to his jungle? And then, obviously, Daystar having an okay time in the side lane, but without his power, you just lose so much in the jungle and mid lane constantly.
Yep. Now the nice thing for Beyond is that, or for Bliss, is they did manage to pick up an early Dragon, which is going to delay that Dragon win condition for a pretty long time. And I think if you can use that time to pick up 2 items on Daystar and Lemus here, that could be a way into this game. Because you do have a good team fight, especially if you can get on Beyond before they kind of set up their poke. But it does feel like you need those items first.
Well, Betty looking at Lemas will miss that Void Seeker, so nothing else to follow through. But even with just that Q, a Cathian Rain alongside that Static Shiv, taking out a fairly substantial amount of Lemus's health, and Liv's being looked at here, flashes over the wall. It is going to be that dredge line landed and going to secure the kill onto Arkia as Lemus now in the middle of a bunch of people, does manage to go down as Betty who picks up that one. And why not now? The next target does use his leap, manages to get the ult out and will keep himself alive. Gets chunked down to half now, but with that bot lane dead for Team Bliss, it should now be Baron here for Beyond.
They're going to look at it, and this would be the absolute worst case scenario for Bliss. If you're wanting to kind of delay and play for your 2 item power spikes, once again, getting caught out and giving over the Baron is going to allow Beyond to accelerate just so fast. And Lemus still kind of languishing so far away from those 2 items. Is going to have a really tough time DPSing in any of these fights.
Yeah,
With
definitely.
that, the gold lead is almost 10,000 here. Only 21 minutes in. You feel like it's pretty unrecoverable at this point for Team Bliss. We'll take a look at a replay of how this happened. And I think Bliss, they were worried, I guess, about this Baron being started up. They did just see Kai'Sa, but I suppose have to ward this eventually. And I guess don't have any blue trinkets. So unfortunately, had to face check it. And at this point, you're so behind that even your tanks aren't really tanky at all. And I think as well, if a fight starts like this, where Betty is just unengaged on, you're completely uncontested on the side, it's just never going to be winnable because your backline just gets out DPS way too hard at this point. And it was honestly kind of lucky, I think, that why not manage to get out there. 3 items here for Betty is absolutely huge power spike.
Yeah, 5 stacks as well on the Dark Seal. you reckon we're going to see a Magi's this game?
I hope so.
We'll have to see. Now, the state of the game at the moment feels really, really hard for Bliss, and that's because they don't really have the best way to deal with a poke comp, especially when you're this far behind. So you see Betty just landing these Void Seekers even onto the Rel, taking a fairly significant amount of health off. 116 down the bot side is going to be looked at, but the Empress Divide goes wide, and Daystar should be taken out here. It's Kongwei who secures that one with the barrel roll. And now this inner tower being looked at. All members of Beyond are here. Betty does get low there. Wynot's looking for him and finds this. Oh, he does not. Betty keeping himself alive just. And it's going to be 2 more members, Wynot and Arkia, getting taken down for that misplay. But damn, that was close.
It was so close. And I respect Bliss going for that. I think at this point, there's pretty much no hope of winning if you just try and bleed out slowly. So I think trying to make a pick, trying to take out Betty or 1116 there is the way to go. But unfortunately, it doesn't work out. They fall further behind off it. Now, at least their mid and bot towers were not broken, at least those tier 3s. But that Baron power play is already up at plus 4k gold for Beyond, and it's not over yet, as this top tower will now be sieged. 3 items picked up here for the Jace as well. And you mentioned falling behind against the poke comp. Feels like poke comps might be the worst comp to fall behind against, because you just, even though you have engaged tools, if you try and go forward. Oh, hold on, they're looking on Lakai.
Looking at Lakai, does get the flash out, but the slice and dice, keeping himself out of harm's way. And back up to the top side. It's Beyond now, getting to work on this top side inhib tower. It's getting pretty low, but Bliss managed to defend it at least for this wave, and there is one more wave of Baron minions to come. Lakai admittedly has not synced the wave, so the mid wave is hitting now. There is the opportunity for Team Bliss to perhaps defend. Depends how much poke they get found by beforehand.
Can they keep this top tower up? If they can keep their base from being broken, it would be big, but they've taken so much damage.
Yeah, Daystar as well being hit there, and it's down. They are going to get it. Now Liv being looked at, does go unstoppable. The sandcastle is built here, but it's Betty going in. He's 1v4, does go golden, and the team are going to be able to get to him. Rooted up, does this Kaiser get, but not before this inhib goes down. They're now looking towards this mid wave. Should be able to take down this inhib too, as you're seeing the damage from Jace. About half HP off of this Kha'Zix. Liv looking for an angle, but ultimately goes all out and is just absolutely quick-scoped by Betty's Void Seeker. And the same thing happens there. Acceleration, Shock Blast will find Wynot. It's 3 members down now for Team Bliss. Just Daystar and Lemus to defend the base. There is no Baron minions. Pretty good poke coming from both these champs. But do they have what it takes? Flash available for Kirez. No flash here for Daystar, and he's flashed up. The crown will not keep him alive. Empress Divide might just do so, though. And at least for now, he stays up. Low health bars for Beyond, and respawn time is coming through. It's Arkia back up. Flash available. Magnet Storm available. Nyx is getting pretty low. He finds 3, and Daystar goes in. That's 2 shutdowns. It's 3 shutdowns. Lakai, the next target, as Arkia is trying to catch up to him. Look for some CC. If they can find this, it's a huge amount of gold and perhaps a chance. He does use his dominance. He is getting stunned up, and Wynot secures the kill? A chance for Bliss in the game.
If there ever were a chance, that might be it. A lot of gold there picked up crucially on the Azir. Kha'Zix is beelining towards the Dragon as well, which would be even more gold. Let's take a look at how it happened. I think it was that really big Magnet Storm. I mean, this is a Rel that I think is 0-7 at this point, but still manages to find so much value. And I think really overreach here from Beyond. They're extremely low. Could just back off, but they get a little greedy, as the PCS often does. You can see here, grouped up, Arkia finds a really nice engage. And finally, now there is damage that can come through in the follow-up for Team Bliss.
Death Cap. Death Cap picked up by the Azir. It's 2 items as well for Lemus. He picked himself up 1 kill in that little confuffle. Now, admittedly, it isn't over. You still have to deal with an immense amount of poke. You've got no Nexus towers, only 1 inhib remains. But you have been given a possibility back into the game.
And that's crazy, right? Because I feel like if you hit these item spikes and you're not down 10,000 gold, there's a pretty good chance that you just win the game. But unfortunately, they are so far behind that it still remains kind of in question. I think Beyond still feel very much in control, especially with those Nexus towers down and 2 inhibs, of course. But Daystar with Crown, Flash, and Rabadons is really, really hard to deal with. Now, that Crown can be procced, but if he wants to go early and just find some sort of engage, especially onto a Kai'Sa who does not have Flash currently, Could be the way in. Oh, a lot of chunk on Alimus.
That's insane. And you have the singular Vamp Scepter here, which is not going to be enough. And we're seeing Why Not caught out on the side. Betty, Killer Instinct, picks himself up that kill. It's now 4v5, and you've got no jungler. Sandcastle's built for a little bit of defense, but ultimately it's going to go down almost immediately, and minions coming in from every angle. Bliss are going to have to put up a mighty fight here. There's no flash on the rail. We can't see the heroics of last team fight, but he still finds 3. Liv knocked into the back, and Lemus trying to offload as much damage as he can. It's the same 2 members remaining, but double kill from Betty. It's 116 who finds the last kill there, and Empress Divide won't land, but Keres will land the dredge line. Daystar goes down. It's an ace. It's game number 1 to Beyond.
It does. Goes the way to the Beyond, and I think that while Bliss, they clearly had some win conditions of their game of going the distance and playing for scaling, I think it's pretty clear that it's not going to work out, especially up against the likes of Beyond. And it feels like, again, while there were some advantages in the draft given over to Bliss, I think giving Betty Kai'Sa kind of nullifies all of them, right? Because I think, I mean, you guys saw from that game, Betty's Kai'Sa is a different beast, and it just added to that insane poke comp, right? The Jace and the Kai'Sa. And I always feel that a lot of the time the poke comps and the PCS don't find the value they normally do because, honestly, the teams don't play around them very well. But I think Kai'Sa especially is different because she just has really good DPS on top of being good at poking, right?
Yep, definitely. And I want to also say the thing about the sort of poke comps in the PCS. It also doesn't work often because there is so much engage that comes up against it. But in this game, there really wasn't. There was Rel, and that was kind of it.
Follow-up,
Azir, you could engage as Azir, but do you want to in this comp? It seemed like he was pretty much your whole damage. So it feels a bit bad to be the initiator if you're Azir. But often we see the Maokai come through as a way to sort of mitigate that poke comp because you throw out the Nature's Grasp, you can no longer stand there. But in this case, we didn't really see that. We had no way to get onto the Jace or onto the Kai'Sa. And yes, you had a strong Azir by the end of the game. Azir can't interact with those champions. He just simply cannot get in range of those champions to do anything until, as you saw at the Nexus, it was too late.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think I would really like to see Bliss draft something a bit more aggressive in the mid lane especially because it feels like if Daystar is kind of the strength of your team, I think just relying on your side lanes to stay stable when you don't have mid priority is going to be really tough, right? Like I feel bad for Lemus because he was getting dived and pushed off the tower after, you know, having no mid prior, after having his jungle invaded, after having his support die. And it's just so hard to play AD carry in that situation, right? I'm sure if you put Betty in that kind of situation, he's honestly not going to do too well either. And I think that that's something we saw from the LCO last split is that they would draft a lot of scaling in the mid game or in the mid lane. And I believe the one game that was picked up was when they played, I think it was because they played Syndra.
Yeah.
Syndra Vi or something like that.
Yeah, it was Syndra Vi Nautilus.
Yeah, and it's really, really hard to get any mid priority up against that, right? And I think that's really where it's got to start against the PCS because if you ever give a side lane prior and mid prior over, you know you're losing that side of the jungle. You know you're getting dived on that side. So they've really got to stabilize mid first. And while Daystar played well, Azir just naturally isn't going to fight skirmishes early, even if he does well in the 1v1.
Yeah, definitely. And I think on that note, with the Azir not really wanting to have these skirmishes earlier, it feels a little bit out of place to have the Kha'Zix as well because Kha'Zix needs help to be able to secure his jungle, especially when you're going up against the Gragas, the Nautilus who roams, and then the Jace who can come and follow as well. The Azir doesn't offer a whole lot when it comes to that early game, and we saw Kongyue constantly in Why Not's jungle there, particularly in the bot side, and it just meant that Why Not wasn't able to pick up any resources, and when you are the Kha'Zix, you desperately need gold to get to that first item spike. The Duskblade is such an important item on those assassins right now, that if you aren't able to get to it in a reasonable time, you are just so far behind.
Yeah. Now, moving into game 2, it will be Bliss who will have their side selection. So I would expect them to go to the blue side because I think it is pretty hard on the red side to, I guess, ban away the things from the side of Beyond that you'd want, right? Like the Kai'Sa being the one that was left through this game. So that'll probably make things a bit easier for them. But I'm curious to see the adaptations. You know, are you going to go, okay, we're fine to just pick scaling again and we just kind of mis-executed the early game? Because I could see that being the takeaway, right? It's not often that a game gets blown up that early, that often, but it feels like that's kind of just been the story, right, of every time LCO comes over and faces a PCS is it doesn't really matter how good your team fighting and, you know, ultra late game is because you just don't get a chance to get there.
Yeah, definitely it does feel like that. And I wonder if it's an angle now that we could see Daystar trying to get onto the Jace because I know in the LCO he's had a really, really successful run on the Jace. And it feels like, honestly, if you get the Jace, you're probably going to be answered by a Tristana by 116. Tristana not as strong as champion by any means. I mean, admittedly, Jace hasn't looked like it either, but I think there was just all the tools in the world needed for him to succeed in this game. But I do feel like maybe you can afford to give over the Maokai because I don't think the Maokai seems like the most important pick when it comes to Beyond. But I do think that maybe getting Daystar on something like the Jace where you can get to the Dirk and start really pressuring around these skirmishes might be the key to success. Otherwise, you could actually just go the sort of Chiefs from last split angle, because really this team does rely quite a lot on Betty a lot of the time. And if you do just go an entire team comp that can shut them down, as well as just, you know, perform regardless, it does feel pretty good against Beyond.
I think so too, and just having more tools in the comp feels good, right? Like a lot of time when we do see stuff, you know, like the Cassante picked up, you'll see lots of engage coming from other roles. And when you're looking at a comp that has, you know, the Cassante and the Kha'Zix, they are lacking for a lot of tools, and something like the Maokai might give that to them. We'll get a look. I believe this was... Not sure what we're looking at, actually. Okay, so Arkia, he's walking up to the Herald, or did they get 2v2'd here? Honestly, don't remember what happened here.
Oh,
I guess
we're just observing.
Okay, well, we'll find out soon. What are we looking at?
Okay.
Okay.
We saw a Void Seeker miss.
So here we go. This is when they had jungle and top side. They have no mid prior, and Lemus, he tries to stay under this tower. Probably should have left, to be fair, but it's always going to be hard to make the decision because either way, you're going to lose something. And if it feels really bad as an AD carry, it feels even worse to then die under the tower. And Arkia steps up too far, gives over another one, which went over to Betty. And I think Betty at this point he's so absurdly far ahead. We check in with the damage there. To no one's surprise, really, it is those two poke champs topping it off.
Conway is surprising him out, though.
Yeah.
I think well played in his own right to find that much damage. He did have a pretty early game focused build, I will say.
He did.
He had the Night Harvester picked up there, but I mean, well played nonetheless. And I think you're really seeing here, pretty much, this is what a game looks like when you play into the PCS's strengths. Give them their early skirmish power, as well as the Kai'Sa. I do truly feel like Kai'Sa probably shouldn't get through again in this entire series. But, I mean, I guess we'll yet to see that one. See who the MVP is, I imagine. Honestly, it might go to 1116 or Kongwei. I actually don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Who do you think?
I feel like... Yeah, I actually don't know.
Yeah,
I was thinking
everyone's...
Keres for setting up a lot of the early game plays, but yeah, I don't know. It feels like pretty well rounded. It does go over to Keres there on the Nautilus, and I think Keres is pretty much all split long been the king of engage really in the PCS. I mean, he just finds some absurd plays, and I think it's so nice to have a player like this on your roster because it just makes the game so much easier for your carries, right? If you're just constantly being spoon-fed kills almost, which was what this one was onto Arkia, right? This was the first blood of the game, and while Keres was the one that picked it up, it ultimately kind of led to Lemus's death later on. And I believe it was Arkia trying to get aggressive with just a slight overextension and so much burst. I mean, I don't play bot lane, but this seems pretty ridiculous. I mean, the man's basically full HP and then he's gone.
Yeah, it is just that Kai'Sa passive is along with, obviously just the damage you get from that Void Seeker. It's a pretty strong early game even. It like does like 200 damage almost at the very beginning of the game. It's pretty absurd. And then Nautilus has traditionally always been the best pairing because he goes in, gets 3 stacks of the passive automatically up, you fire the W and boom. There goes 500 of your health. It is actually absurd. And I mean, well played, honestly, by the bot lane there of Beyond. The whole map, really. I mean, how good does it feel if you're that Jace? You walk bot, you don't even get to the tower. You just fire off a Q and you pick yourself up a kill.
That is so efficient, man. You get down there, you get back to your wave in no time at all, especially because he kind of has a little bit of a rough 1v1 matchup. But as long as you get kills from other lanes, then who cares?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I want to say credit as well to Arkia there in that game. I think he played pretty well. The start of it, but the engages he found were very impressive near the end of the game. And like from 14k almost deficit to be able to pick up a team fight win, very impressive. But I believe we will be going to a break. When we come back, it'll be game. Oh, we're not. We're not going to break. I'm lying.
Not going to a break.
No.
No, but when we look at game 2, I think the Kai'Sa will be a question because I think if Bliss choose that blue side, they could first pick the Kai'Sa, right?
Yeah.
But they will be matched by the Zeri.
Beyond do pretty much always ban the Kai'Sa though. So it feels like, I don't even think Beyond
I think that's
will
almost
give it
like
over.
a leftover though, from when Zeri was not really an option, right?
Yeah.
And now it feels like the Zeri is kind of rising in priority. So that could be something we look at?
It could be. And I think as Bliss, you might feel pretty okay if you get the Kai'Sa because it does seem just so strong. And to almost any matchup, you can kind of beat it out when you do have those poke champs. But even then, she gets her poke of her own as soon as she gets to that Nash's build. And now, I won't be lying to you. We are going to go to a break, but we will be back with game number 2, so do stick around.
just divine. I'll empty your mind, 'cause you want me to. I'm so twisted, you're addicted. I feel your pain, 'cause you want me to. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so bad for you. 'Cause I can't give you everything you want. Make you feel I'm so good for you. Love being bad for you. 'Cause I can't give everything you desire. So close the doors, let me in, let me taste the darkness in you. No one serves me like you. You ask me to slay you, to burn you, to haunt you, so you feel. So do you feel me now? I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. 'Cause I can't give you everything you want. Make you feel I'm so good for you. Love being bad for you. 'Cause I can't give everything you desire. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you.
Flex on the beat. Flex on the beat.
We are back here. It's time for game number 2 of Team Bliss versus Beyond. And now I think when we go into this one, we're really going to have to look at the drafting phase. I think giving Betty Kaiser no longer an option.
Probably not. I think that I would just like to see more fight in the early game, really, from Bliss. And it's always going to be tough, right? Because the PCS, they get to practice this kind of style all split long, right? Whereas it feels like in the LCO, there's definitely different things that succeed, right? The teams don't tend to find the same sort of early advantages. And so you can get away with drafting a bit greedier and drafting towards more of that late game. So you really got to adapt quickly here. And it's going to be tough. Like you said, I believe that does start in the drafting phase. And it will be interesting to see if they move over to that blue side. Are they going to kind of stick to their guns and stay on the red? I'm not too sure.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, neither of us really are until we get into that champ select. But I think, really, at this stage, I want to see Daystar get Jace personally because he has looked so good on it in the LCO. And you feel like he can transfer it and be just as strong here. It doesn't feel like he's going to be outlaned by 116 by any means. I do think, though, you might need some jungler that has a bit more pressure early so you can contest Kongyue and what he wants to do. I mean, you saw him just, as I said before the break, constantly invading Why Not's jungle and just found everything he wanted. And it really did set up that bot lane to succeed. And obviously it led really to Lemus's early death and then to Arceus right behind it. Feels a bit hard to draft a more greedy jungler when you are against the Beyond team because Kongyue, not afraid to just brawl you.
No. And this will be Bliss choosing the blue side, so they are going to have greater selection in their bans, and they're going to be able to either pick up that Kai'Sa or maybe they could even ban it away. It'd feel pretty weird to ban it on the blue side, but if they have no intention of playing it, I think it would be better to ban it up against Betty. Feels like giving Betty either Kai'Sa or Xayah is really, really bad.
Yeah, it does often lead to Beyond winning when he gets either of those two champs, but it also doesn't feel very easy to get him off of those. Now, you could blue first Xayah, but then you feel like you're leaving open too many to be taken away. It is Sejuani banned here by Beyond. They often do ban the Sejuani and Maokai, but it is going to be Bliss who, in fact, banned the Maokai there, as well as the Ral. Admittedly, Kyrie's is one of Kyrie's strongest champions. He's played it the most, the split out of any champ. Not too surprising, I suppose, to see that taken away. No. But Annie again left open from 116. I'm pretty sure we're going to see an Annie Viego this time.
Yeah, would not be surprised. I guess LeBlanc could be an option too. I think the Maokai ban it's troublesome, right? Because I think banning Maokai on both sides says you're not going to play it. And it feels like Maokai is probably the best jungler in the game, right? So if you're unwilling to prioritize it, it feels really, really bad. The LeBlanc is that first pick, and I wonder if this will be matched by the Annie. I believe we've seen Annie versus LeBlanc twice in the PCS. I know Pretender played it once, and I can't remember who the other one was. It might have been 116.
Probably was.
Yeah, we'll see.
Aatrox the hover.
Yeah,
now,
this is 13.14.
Yeah, so Aatrox has been buffed, but Annie, this seems like Beyond.
Yeah.
Very much so. Probably going to be an Annie locked in. Probably going to be a Viego that follows.
Now, I wonder, do you just take away the Xayah now, though? Or do you take the Viego? I mean, I guess they could be happy with playing Varus into Xayah. I think it's kind of a lost condition for Beyond, but I think if you take Xayah, not that likely that Why Not would take away the Viego. We'll see, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they did hover the Viego already. I expect them to just lock it in. It's been so strong for this team. Although Nautilus.
Do we ever think this is a Nautilus flex? Because I would say...
I'd say no.
No, yeah.
Just simply because it's Kongyue.
That is going to give over the potential of a Xayah, and that feels kind of weird. I'm not sure why you would give that over here, especially if you are intending on playing the Nautilus, right? Because it feels like Xayah's ult is the best up against it, but maybe they just want to play something like the Varus Naut into it. And if they feel like the Bliss bot lane is just too weak in the lane and they can punish it, that could be the way. But Varus, in PCS so far at least, has been very unsuccessful.
Yeah,
Blocking the Alistar.
And the PCS so far, the only person that pretty reliably finds success on the Varus is Wako on PSG. Ooh. I wouldn't be too surprised to see Zeri. Ooh, that could be exciting.
Lots of different picks here.
Are they actually going to lock in an 80 carry here? I mean, it will mean that there can't be bans towards it. But still surprising from Beyond nonetheless. Looks like the Zeri will be locked in here. So it's almost certainly going to be the Zeri alongside the Nautilus in that bot side. And now as Team Bliss, do you now ban the Viego? Because I still feel like you just don't want to give over the Viego to Kongyue.
Yeah, I think you should. I wonder what you ban with it. I mean, you ban something like the Wukong. He hasn't played it in forever. I guess you could ban away one of the top laners if you wanted. Doesn't feel like top bans against Lakai go very far though. Ultimately, we'll just be comfortable picking up one of the Jax, Renekton, or Cassante. Maybe just taking away the Renekton just to make your early game a bit easier. Because again, you've got LeBlanc, Xayah. Like, you've got very good scaling. As just those early skirmishes are going to be tough again.
Yeah. And perhaps Beyond doing a bit of scouting themselves, have banned out the Kindred. Definitely one of Why Not's preferred champions that we've seen in competitive. So taking that away from Why Not does feel pretty good.
I believe it was nerfed this patch as well, so even in spite of that, paying the respect. And I think the Vi ban is really, really smart.
Yeah.
I think that allows just so much more freedom for Betty. And you often saw, the Vi plus aggressive mid laner picked into Zeri in that previous split. They ban away the Poppy, which feels kind of random, but I guess it is good against their comp. I'm just not sure who would play it. I don't really see Kongwei or Lakai being the ones to pick it up. But maybe just want to protect for a Jax blind if they're going to go for that. And it could be Kongwei's turn to the Kazakhs. Admittedly, this is a Kazakh with a lot more tools around him. Has that Annie mid, for example. We'll see what the last pick will be for their top lane. Now, though, 4-5 for Bliss. Got to pick up your jungler and your top. So the normal thing to do, at least for PCS, would just be, take Renekton and then just whatever jungler that is still left. But I don't think LCO prioritize Renekton as highly. We'll see, though. Okay, I like it. I mean, I think this is kind of the bridge that allows you to get through the early game and at least secure that first Herald, which feels like a big deal because giving a Herald over to something that already scales so well like a Zeri does feel kind of problematic.
Which jungler do you pair with it, though? You know you're going up against the Kazakhs. I feel like you have to have something that complements the LeBlanc somewhat to have some pressure in that mid-wave against Annie.
Rengar. I think this was also the patch Rengar was nerfed.
Yeah, it is. Fresh Rengar nerfs.
That's interesting. I mean, Rengar and the Kazakhs, you get the quest still, right?
You do. I think that comes in pretty late, though.
Yeah, well, maybe why not just role-playing?
Okay. Allow the current hover. Jax.
It has to be Jax,
yeah,
right?
Be
It's
Jax.
always Jax for Lakai.
It is.
Okay, well, I think looking at the draft, Bliss at least have a much easier time contesting early objectives here. For me, big question mark around the Rengar. Not even so much because it's bad, just because, honestly, I'm not too sure how it does, right? Like, I think that we have not seen Rengar jungle in competitive for a pretty long time. Last time I remember it was, I don't know, maybe being picked into Evelyn at Worlds or something? It was like tank Rengar.
Do you think it'll be a tank Rengar here, or just try and...
why not's too Chad?
Yeah, he's going to shut down Betty.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll have to see. I mean, admittedly, I will say it pairs pretty well with the LeBlanc. Not in the laning phase, but certainly around sort of the mid-game where LeBlanc sits in that side lane with the static Shiv. You can have a lot of priority there because obviously the uncertainty of where Rengar is can add a lot to that skirmishing power. But you will have to maintain pretty good vision control, I feel, and
yeah.
I'm not sure, at least after last game, it doesn't seem like Bliss were able to do that. Now, they do have a little bit more agency in that mid lane, of course, with that LeBlanc, and top as well, having a better matchup for himself as that Renekton into the Jax. Could mean that you are able to sort of establish some dominance, at least in that top side of the map. I will say that bot, I'm not entirely sure about it. It feels like it could really just go either way. We don't often see the Zeri into Xayah. In fact, even last split where Zeri was picked a lot, it ended up getting sort of taken away from the meta, and we saw Xayah into Aphelios a lot. So we'll have to see how that dynamic happens down there. Obviously, Alistair into Nautilus, something we've seen quite a few times.
Yeah. Well, I'm at least glad that, like you said, Bliss have more agency, and it feels like they have more aggression kind of across the board. It feels like this is a team comp that could probably take it to Beyond in the early game. And I'd like to see that, because I think that if Bliss can manage to at least compete in the early game, they might even be favored just as a team as the game goes on. I still think Beyond kind of head into this as the favorite, though, just because of how dominant they were in game one. And also, I can't really say no to 1116 on Annie. I feel like he's been really good on the pick, and it also synergizes so well with basically any aggro jungler.
Electrocute on the Rengar.
Yeah, I like
should
that.
mean we'll be seeing a Duskblade or the likes of.
It's very Chad.
But you are going to have to fight over control of your camps again, because Kongwei, I'm sure he's not going to be scared of once again invading and looking for advantages that way. Looks like both junglers might be starting on the top side of the map.
Once again, Beyond off to that very slight lead by having those level 1 wards. Now, something a little interesting for mid lane is that Daystar does not have the D-mats. So I believe this was the patch where D-mats were nerfed, so that even, or sorry, the Shiv was nerfed, so that even with D-mat, you don't actually one-shot the wave. And if you don't one-shot the wave, the D-mats seem kind of pointless. Oh, a lot of damage on the carriers. Nice little trade there for Bliss, especially because they got a little bit of extra sustain.
Definitely. Very nice start to the game. It's going to force out at least a potion early from carriers on that Nautilus. And mid, this is another champ that Daystar has found quite a lot of success on.
Yep. How annoying is Annie's shield? I can't believe that thing procs first strike, by the way. I know he procced it with an auto there, but I can't believe it. You just E yourself, and you get first strike. Now, I believe when we saw Annie into LeBlanc last in the PCS, it was with Aries Scorch, so a lot of early game power. But maybe now, 116 feels like the first strike is the way to go instead. Looks like trades are going decently for him, and actually a lot of trades up in the top lane.
Yeah. Liv doing pretty well for himself, as is Lakai. Obviously, this matchup tends to favor the Renekton for the most part. Starts to become more Jack's favored as you get those items online. Divine Sundra being a big one.
Yep. At least in mid and bot, though, it is Bliss that have priority and therefore have options. We'll see what they end up doing. Well, actually, big trades in top lane.
Yeah,
Lived.
Lakai might just...
Ooh.
Oh, okay. Livs hangs on to his flash. Pretty confident there.
Oh, no.
Okay. Lakai actually taking up
very
tower
low.
there.
Yeah, he's going to have to back. I wonder if Liv will chase him. Doesn't look like it. It's going to be a nice, respectful base.
Yeah. Looked like Lakai got the better of the matchup and then kind of threw it away with that attempted dive. I don't even know if it was an attempted dive, but certainly took up some tower shots. Put his health in a bad spot. And bot lane here for Team Bliss going fairly decently this time.
Yeah, this is looking a lot more competitive already. Although it's only 3 minutes into the game. I feel like it's much better signs from Team Bliss. Anyway, he could look for something on this butt scuttle, but I think given the bot prio, it doesn't seem that good to me. I'm surprised that Beyond want to fight this.
Oh, Akia finds a nice knock up there, and it's first blood to Lemus already. Kongyue getting caught out a little bit there as 116 flashes forward, will not find the stun, but it's going to be Lemus who's getting very, very low, has the blue buff and the red buff available for himself, finds himself a second kill. Early 2 kills here found for Lemus on the Xayah. Great signs for Team Bliss, and as you're saying, feels weird that Beyond tried to fight it.
Yeah, I am really surprised by how aggressively they tried to contest that. You've got a Zeri with Cull, you know, forced under tower. I mean, just look at this. You're walking in the river. Solo is Kha'Zix. Meanwhile, the mid and the bot are both collapsing, and it just feels like super greed from Kongyue. I'm not too sure what he expected here. Maybe that Annie could get the Prio, but it's quite hard to get Prio 1v1 against the LeBlanc, and you can see with all these Bliss members already here, the Zeri rotating so late. Really nice engage from Arkia. Yeah, nice follow-up as well. And that's a huge win for Bliss. You can see here, 116, he flashed in, but he stuns the Xayah who had that cleanse, and does live with just a sliver of HP. Obviously, huge win, and now they have to try and get more done with that. Why not? He's going to come to this top jungler, and he could find Kongyue. He's got a ward spotting him out, I believe. But since he's resetting, won't be able to look for him. He's got that Dirk as well, so it is just going to be, like you said, with the electrocute, a lot of damage. And I hope that with this, Bliss don't just leave it at 2 kills, and they at least try and get some objectives with it. Even if they can't force any dives, although it feels like dives could be possible, you know, especially with no flash on Betty.
Definitely. Heal available, but again, yeah, no flash. Feels pretty decent. Chance of a dive. Maybe you do want to get Rengar closer to 6 as Kongyue's headed bot side will be able to pick up his Gromp, although he's looking for a lane gank for the time being.
Wonder if he's just looking to counter, because it doesn't feel that possible, but I guess do need to put some sort of pressure on this wave that's pushing out. Especially with no flash on the Zeri. She is a little vulnerable.
No sums 2 on Lemus and the Xayah.
So
And Hook does land onto Arkia, and they see Kongyue now. Arkia has flash available, will have to use it there, but importantly keeps himself from going down, so no gold given over as well as pressure. It is just Kongyue.
Why not? Could look mid here. There are no mercs for 116, so if he gets chained... Ooh, nice stun though. I think he'll be fine.
Chain hits onto Tibbers. Does have to commit the Tibbers though. And now in fairness, oftentimes Annie does just put down the Tibbers to help her clear waves out and find a recall. So now that could just be the angle. Kongyue though, invading Why Not's jungle. Just going to find that scrying orb and head back towards the mid wave.
I'm not too sure what he's looking for here. I guess just wants Annie to be safe pushing out. So just going to be able to reset. But I think, you know, starting the game like this for Bliss is, well, it's not just a better look, but it is actually just really good for their comp. You're not really expecting LeBlanc and Rengar to be able to get involved in too many fights pre-6, and having a lead in those positions already is really good. And of course, 2-0 on Lemus on the Xayah. Now, it's still down CS to Betty. And you kind of feel like that was because the Xayah got chunked so low in that first skirmish, was forced to reset. Everything else, though, kind of going as expected. Kai definitely getting maybe a bit more than expected, though.
Yeah. Both level 6s now. It feels like Lived at any stage can go toe-to-toe against the Jax. Kai going for a recall here. He might lose a couple of minions. Renekton can push that wave reasonably quick. And recall's really across the map here for Beyond.
Yep, eyes on the Herald, really, spawning at 8 minutes. And I feel like this is one that should pretty comfortably go to Bliss. They have that Renekton in the top side, and they should be stronger pretty much everywhere else on the map. The question is, are Beyond going to kind of rage contest this, or are they going to try trade something on the other side of the map? Kongyue's recalling pretty late, so it suggests there might not even be a trade at all. He's not going to be in time for the drag. So if Bliss get this, they would just be getting everything they want in the early game.
Definitely. And where do you put it? I guess bot makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, bot or mid maybe. A
yeah,
lot of the
getting
time,
LeBlanc-ish static can also...
Yeah, I think also when you're against static champs, trying to take that or get damage on it early is really good. Because it ends up kind of stagnating, I guess, in the mid game. When you can't actually hit the tower anymore because they're just one-shots the wave. Now, they are starting up the dragon. It's a little late. But I think with the amount of tempo invested onto the top side, it should go the way of the Beyond. So it feels like things are very much reversed for these first objectives here from our previous game. But it's a position that I think Bliss should be a lot more comfortable with than they were before. Still though, I don't think it's like Beyond are uncomfortable with this anyway. Obviously you've got the Betty win condition, and he's got himself a hyper carry, which you can always rely on.
Definitely is the case. And also feels like Lemus, for the side of Bliss, has pretty much the best champion to deal with a lot of the threat coming through from Beyond. And with those 2 early kills, Team Bliss certainly have an avenue in this game to pick up a win in the series. In fact, I almost would say you'd favour their team at the moment.
I think so,
to be able to pick up the win.
Does feel a bit like Betty versus Bliss at this point. Lemus getting pretty aggro. There's Kongyue waiting in the wings. And I think Beyond should know the Why Not's around. This is likely to be a 3v3, and I think it's one that Bliss should win. Now, there is no level 6 on Alistair, but Nautilus does have his 6.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how close he is. Daystar landing that chain will force out Tibbers yet again.
Some nice trades. Why not? He is looking for something bot.
Now, teleport is going to be unlocked here, and only Lived has it up. Well, 116 does as well, but for the top laners, it is Lived with that advantage. So in theory, could teleport to help if there were to be anything break out, but it is just going to be recalls coming through. Wonder how much gold Lemus has. Feels like he should have a fairly large amount. In fact, I wouldn't be even too surprised if he has the Kraken.
Yeah, he's a rich boy. Got a lot of gold. See what he picks up. Looks like it's not the Kraken quite yet. But he's got his tier 2 boots as well, so he's very comfortable with where he's at.
Definitely.
LeBlanc is still pretty far from the Shiv. That is because she went for the Mercs nice and early, which I think is... You kind of have to versus the Annie. Does feel pretty hard to play without that extra tenacity. Some trades in the top lane that are favoring Lived. Picks up a plate for himself there.
Definitely. I mean, top lane and bot lane really feeling pretty good about themselves at the moment. Even the LeBlanc not being pressured all that much and having a fairly reasonable speed at achieving the static shiv means when lane phase does end, LeBlanc should have it and should feel pretty comfortable in that side lane, getting pressure around the map and Why not's actually in the area. Lakai has just teleported. But with the wave pushing, okay, Counter-Strike comes out. Pretty decent trade from Lakai onto Lived. But certainly shouldn't be aware of the whereabouts of Rengar. In fact, Rengar comes through, does land the root, but nice leap strike, gets Lakai nice and safe behind his minions. It is a big chunk though, and so just committing that teleport and immediately getting chunked feels fairly terrible. Lived hasn't backed in a very long time too. Still sitting on that pickaxe, still sitting on that longsword. He's had that for a fair amount of time. See if he can, what he can pick up here. Should have the Iron Whip spike, maybe the Warhammer.
TP's back top.
This is a full gorge. Yeah, that feels really, really nice now as the Renekton. More trades coming out mid. Fairly even, all things considered. Because the tip is now being gone. Much longer cooldown. Why not though? Ulting on. Flashes forward. Will not land. That snare, and it's in fact Kongyue who's trying to turn it around. There's no flash now for this Rengar, and he will be found out. Why not? Going a little bit too deep there, is going to find himself being caught. Kongyue picking up that one on the Kazakhs.
That feels like a pretty big pickup. Kazakh's not a champ that functions very well from behind, and neither is Rengar. So getting that kill is really big. I think also, I'm not sure if I saw it right, but I think Kongyue might have got an extra 100 gold there from the first strike. Did seem like a lot of gold picked up, and so that's pretty nice. Oh, did the Herald expire?
I think so.
Okay, let's take a look at this. Nice trades out in the mid lane for both sides, really. It's pretty even, all things considered. And why not uses this as an opportunity to go? Now, Kongyue is in the area. This is a lot of ground to cover. Yeah.
He didn't go invisible. Well, he did go invisible, but just as he was seen as well.
Yeah, plus 105 on the first strike. How ridiculous is that? I mean, that's a huge amount of gold picked up. And more importantly, I think the Herald expiring. Because, you know, if you can manage to drop the Herald, that's a nice bit of gold for you, and also makes breaking the mid tower a lot easier in the mid game. Now, as soon as Zeri rotates there with that Shiv, that tower is not dropping again, because one Herald is not really it's not really enough, right? You need two Heralds to drop the mid tower normally. So it does feel like that's going to slow down the mid game a lot, which isn't necessarily bad for Bliss. They still scale pretty well, but once again, it gives Betty the time he needs to become the just 1v9 machine we know he is.
Definitely. And you do see, obviously, AD carries both completing their items. Lemus should be still ahead. Has those 2 kills. Of course, already feeling pretty good about himself in the game, as we've said. It is Dragon started up by Team Bliss. Why not being on that nice and early? Kongyue, though, will probably spot it out here.
It is blue trinketed out.
Yep.
I think this, it's hard to fight. Again, you don't have the prior.
Oh, it's
Looks
bot
like they're
lane.
going bot.
Featherstorm comes out, will dodge out of Nautilus's ultimate as well. Why not jumping over? Will find himself a return kill. Kongyue going down. That's the jungler dead. Now you almost certainly get this dragon, and Team Bliss once again finding some foothold in the game. Although the bot lane aren't so convinced that this is Team Bliss's, are coming up. Lived though in the area should all but confirm that Team Bliss will pick this up. Lakai headed down, but with that, it should be top laners now returning to their lane. Bliss picking up themselves their first dragon of the game. It's going to be the Hex Tech yet again for them.
Nice pickup, of course. I think question marks, really big question marks around what Kongyue is doing, because that's the second time that he's really disrespected the prior, walked in the river, and then been hard punished for it. He gets jumped on by the Rengar. The follow-up that comes out of LeBlanc did take him down. And maybe Kongyue is just not used to not having as much prior from the bot lane. Not too sure what it is, but he's getting way too greedy, and Bliss are punishing him for it. The gold difference still remains in Bliss's favor, but it's certainly not one-sided.
No.
Within touching distance. And one dragon apiece now. Herald is up and available. See who ends up looking for it. Feels like the Renekton might still be too strong on the top side at this point.
Yeah, definitely feels like that. Gore Drinker being completed means a lot more in a team fight than the Divine Sunderer. Although the Divine Sunderer, of course, can mean the 1v1 feels a bit better for Jax at the moment.
Betty is recalling, so I wonder if they are just going to now move him towards mid and start trying to contest these objectives. There is no TP on 1116, so if he does walk to bot, he'll probably have to give this one up. Water drop, there's lots of pings here from beyond, so it seems like they want to start this up. I think if you're Bliss, maybe just let Lemus take the bot tower. We'll see what they end up doing. I mean, Lemus is so far away. I think if you're Bliss, just try and delay this as much as you can. hit bot. Okay, instead they're going to bring Lemus up, but it feels too late. This is a 4v5.
It is.
Lakai has TP. Will he TP in?
Now, Rengar ulting, coming through, looking for Betty as the angle, Arkia as well, but he'll be hooked up. Arkia finds a headbutt, but not the pulverize, and it's why not getting absolutely obliterated. Kill goes over to 1116 on that Annie, and with Lakai teleporting in, it's a matter of time until that double kill comes through. Arkia going down. It's 2 kills for Annie. 1116 having the time of his life in that team fight, and again, it was just the power of that 4v5, the ability to bring in the Jax, and why not going a bit ahead of himself. Teamfight win for Beyond. Rift Herald picked up, and it should be the tower that follows.
Yeah, another nice swing that goes the way of Beyond. I hope we get a replay of it. I do think it was sort of questionable decision-making from Bliss, because I think that, okay, on one hand, it does make sense that you want to contest this, right? You're very strong, you've got this Renekton, but if you want to fight this, Xayah needed to be here a wave earlier. And then actual teamfight execution, I mean, why not? He goes in very early, can't find access to Betty. Ulti had timed out, and I'm not sure he did any damage in that fight. And this is a Rengar that if he does find the target, can almost kill them 100-0.
Yeah.
And so finding that little impact is disastrous, and you can see Bliss coaching staff there. Heartbroken.
Yeah, it is obviously the Rengar. He had the Serrated Dirk, he had the Dust Blade. Getting onto Betty would almost certainly mean that Betty goes down, but wasn't able to. Ultimately, it feels like someone had to go in and get that started before Why Not could go in, but just didn't happen.
No, and I guess they didn't feel confident to make something happen because they were waiting for the Xayah to come up, right?
Yeah.
Feels like just a disconnect that if you do want to fight that, you bring Xayah way earlier, and if you don't, then you just commit Xayah to hitting the bot tower. Unfortunately, they don't really choose either. They do get punished for it. Why not? He could look for something again here.
Yeah, he is going to be on the hunt. Won't find anything. Does manage to get the flash out of Kyrgios on this Nautilus, and the knock-up found on Kongwei will force away that leap. And it's 116 getting very low. Lemus looking for another kill here. He's also looking for Kyrgios. Does find that one. Is not going to find 116. It's ultimately going to be Daystar who picks up that one, and Liv now looking forward. Flash out of Kongwei, and Betty will remain safe, but it is ultimately Bliss who pick up 2 there. Lakai, though, on the top side, has found himself an inner tower. Finding himself a lot of gold there while the team fight breaks out, but it is a 3-0 Xayah as well as a 2-0 LeBlanc.
I'm not even sure who that favors. I think it might be Bliss favor, just because now that you've got that 2-item spike on the Xayah, it's really, really big. But so much gold given on top side doesn't feel great. Now, the Annie ult, importantly, did not hit the Rengar here. I think fight also ended up very split, which I think was kind of poorly played from Beyond. Feels like there might have been a way to kite out together. Unfortunately, it went further down the river, and Renekton TPs very early. I'm not sure if Lakai has TP, but I like the discipline just to hold it and just keep going top, because by the time you get to this fight, it looks pretty doomed. Yeah, it looks like he didn't have TP, so didn't even have to make the decision. But this is a really strong Xayah the next fight, and I think Bliss now, your win condition probably is to step up and just keep spamming these dragons, really. Because I think you don't want to let Betty just scale into this game. Well, Betty will be able to carry eventually. It's still a very long way away. Does not have the items that he needs. So just keep looking to fight, keep taking these 5v5 skirmishes. 5v5 team fights, I suppose.
Yep.
They should be good.
There is no flash or ult available for Lemus at the moment, but also there is no flash for 116. So as long as he doesn't position too aggressively, he should stay safe. It is going to be the second dragon now for Team Bliss as Lakai making some headway on pushing that top side. Kira's also shadowing him very close by in the jungle.
Feels like the best Beyond could really get there. I think without flash on Annie, it is pretty difficult to take that team fight. I think as well, you probably want to wait for Betty to hit 2 items before you look for anything. But I think this is starting to kind of get towards Bliss's favor, just in terms of, you know, the longer these games go, I'd say the more in the LCO's territory they become of kind of getting towards those late game team fights, whereas Beyond feels like late game really is just the Betty show, and prior to that.
Ooh, Daystar might have to use his Mimic here. In fact, he will. Not the longest of cooldowns, but certainly a nice cooldown to get away. I wonder how much first strike gold he just picked up. I didn't actually see.
Yeah, he's been getting quite a lot off that. Are they going to look for this bot tower? Okay, Betty backs and picks up his Navori, which is a very big pickup. I think Betty now is... He's online. I'm not sure if he's the 1v9 carry machine yet, but he is getting there. And you can see how healthy this mid tower is, especially with that Herald being wasted earlier on in the game. It's so easy for that Shiv Zeri to just keep it alive. Now, where will we look next? But Bliss, I think you want to break that tier 1. It should be pretty easy with how LeBlanc's going in the side lane. But getting mid priority is not the easiest, even with your Xayah being this strong, just because the wave just gets deleted. See, so much damage taken on the wave before the next one's even here, which gives Beyond a lot of freedom around mid. Maybe they could look for dives top. There is no Zhonya on the Annie. I think it's being worked on, but doesn't have it yet.
Oh, I don't think Why Not wants this. There are 3 members nearby this Annie. Kongwei looking to stop the Rengar, and in fact will. That's going to be Why Not. Losing his ult there on Rengar. Finds himself another avenue back here though.
It is Bliss that have a lot of control around this topside river. I'm not sure if they want to be the ones starting up the Baron, but if they can find a pick, I think it's very easy for them to do it. And they have a lot of tools to make the picks. Now going to be moving, or at least attempting to move into that top side. It's not the easiest because Beyond do have some very good pick tools, and maybe they're looking here. Damage onto
getting
Arkia.
slowed up, will be hooked. He's going to pop that ult. Means he won't likely be going down, although the amount of CC that's come through, this man cannot move. Ignite follows, but he does have to commit that flash to get away. And with Alistair now, no ult, no flash. It should be more vision control established for Beyond as they do make a headway into that top side. Daystar flashing forward, gets stunned up again, but he does manage to stay alive. He will lose his flash as well, however. Importantly though, they have the wave clear here on Xayah to thin the wave and not lose their tower. It is though Beyond turning their attention towards this Baron. They're not going to start it off though. Going to use this tempo to recall and get back on the map.
Yep. I think starting up the Baron versus LeBlanc would be pretty suicidal. Just a really good champ at stopping that. And oftentimes, we see the LeBlanc not finding a lot of value just in those raw team fights. But to Bliss's credit, they have made sure that LeBlanc does kind of find the angles, finds the poke that she needs before the fight actually unfolds. All things considered, though, it's pretty even still for both teams. It is a 2 dragon to 1 advantage for Bliss, but the goal...
Oh, Kongwei. Oh, Daystar not wanting any of that. It is just going to be a trade there of really just the ward. Makai, though, now starting to have some freedom in this lane as Arkia gets stunned up. He's going to get slowed. Tib is also used. He's going to commit his ult again. Why not, though? Looking for Betty. Finds a reasonable amount of damage and does make Betty pop the ult, but it's not without going down as Arkia headbutts 116 away. Does still go down and live now. In the middle of 4, they're trying to find whatever they can. Lima's popping that Featherstorm on the back of the fight. It's not going to be enough. The story of last game happens again as Daystar and Limas left with it all to do as Beyond start to work on this Baron.
I wonder, are they just going to straight give it over? I feel like there might be potential for LeBlanc to poke around here, but looks like with that much threat, Daystar is just going to head towards the bot side. And a game that was so close for so long now is going to start to break open. A big lead for Beyond now picked up, have the Baron and have a lot of time to use it. Sizable gold lead there. And unfortunately, I think we will get a replay of that fight, but Daystar was on bot lane. I'm not sure if he TP'd in. We'll see how it starts, because I think Arkia being engaged on again, it's not the worst. He has the ulti back up. But I think the Rengar, once again, kind of found no value. Let's see. Initial engage on Arkia. It's looking fine. Rengar's got that flank this whole time. Daystar is bot. He TP's in. But the Rengar just goes in and there's no follow-up. I think needed to wait for the LeBlanc to be there. Or maybe for the Renekton to TP in as well. But ultimately just went a tad too early. And so went in and was just taken out immediately. And that's the thing with Rengar, right? It's very hit or miss. You either go in, you kill someone, or, well, you don't. And suddenly you don't add anything to the team fight. You don't add any utility, no CC. So just missed timing there from Why Not, costs them big. Now, there are still pretty big items on the side of Bliss. You know, you look at the likes of Lemus, and he's very fed. They look for something again.
Gets caught up. He's getting stunned. He needs to get that heal off. He is, but it's not really that much as Daystar's trying to find some poke in the background as Lakai also finds himself at a flank. It's Arkia, though, in the middle of 3. Likely to go down. Lived gets hooked up. Lakai being looked at, though, as Lemus. He does have the Featherstorm and the Flash and the Cleanse. He's going to use it. At least some of them is Lakai getting so low, but they aren't able to find it. It's Beyond, again, winning themselves a fight. They pick up 1, and it's likely to be the second dragon for them as well. This is the angles over and over again, not favoring Bliss, although Daystar trying to find something on 116. Won't land the chain, though. Betty coming over. Does have ult available for him.
I think what's so problematic now as well is that Betty is level 15 and Rengar is level 12. So it's so hard now to assassinate this AD because he's just so fed. You can see Betty even higher level than Daystar. And normally LeBlanc is the kind of champ, especially with the Shiv build, that's just levels and miles ahead of everyone else. Why not? Maybe getting a bit desperate here. I don't think anything will be
hook
found.
lands, but it's onto Arkia. He does go forward. Petey's going to have to flash away. Does not have ult available for him. Lemus picks up one. Why not, though? Goes down to 116 on the backside as Arkia is also found by the combination of Betty and Kongyue at the end as well. Kongyue getting that reset, jumps forward, manages to secure the kill onto Lemus. It's Lived and Daystar. They're up against the side of BYG. Now, admittedly, a lot of death has happened, but not a whole lot of objectives have been taken, and this Baron is almost over.
Does feel that way. The tier 2s mid and bot haven't been broken, which was probably what Beyond were after. Now, still found themselves that gold lead. You can see there in the top right. A 4K Baron power play, but the towers do still remain. Now, I think Lemus and Daystar still remain in this game too. They're very, very strong, but the Rengar feels well and truly outscaled now. If you can't kill this Zeri, doesn't feel like there's much else for you to do. And with a BT picked up, it means that even a chunk onto her won't really matter. Oftentimes in the early game, if you can chunk an ADC to 50%, 40% in health, they won't really be able to team fight from then on anyway. But with that BT picked up, not going to be an issue for Betty whatsoever. 3 items are here for Daystar. So this is where the LeBlanc really starts to come into its own. You've got a lot of poke, you've got a lot of split push pressure, and a lot of damage, but the problem is when these 3 items on LeBlanc come in after the BT picked up by Betty. Often feels like if you can get that poke before the ADC gets lifesteal, then you're really, really impactful. But if you get it too late, because either you don't pick up enough gold or the enemy AD ends up too accelerated, you quickly become useless. We'll see if he can find anything, though. Beyond, they're controlling this bot side, but no objectives up for 2 more minutes, and I would be surprised if anything happened. Maybe an engage will be found, but for the most part, I think this should just be slowly sieging this away. Maybe Bliss won't be happy to give this one up, though. Let's see.
Kai jumping forward with that counter-strike. This tower has been taken out and Liv now being looked at. Dominus is procced, but he's just caught out. Team Bliss not in the close enough vicinity to be able to follow up on his movements forward, really, as Lemus does walk up, but is able to use that double dagger to locate the side of BYG. And it is Daystar picking up this mid tower, which does help. But ultimately you feel like, what can you do with this? You'd really want to be able to try and get those dragons, but doesn't feel all that possible. Daystar, though, managing to get out here. Looks like Beyond were trying to look for him.
Didn't find him in time, though.
Does have Lich Bane now, so
yeah.
Can be a bit of a pest when it comes to any sort of sieging or even objective plays. But it is really that it almost feels like a 4v5 at this point. The Rengar is going to have such a hard time to find any value. Honestly, it almost feels like the only person you can try and look for is this Kha'Zix. But even then, Kha'Zix is just so slippery that it doesn't feel all that possible.
Okay, found again.
He is. He finds a 2-man pulverize. But even with that damage reduction, it's not going to be enough. He does just go down. Now, importantly, we'll be back alive for the time of this Baron spawn. But what do they lose in the meantime? At least as mid lane inner goes down. Why not? And Livs are looking for Lakai on the bot side. Carries flash forward. Will land their hook there. And Why Not's just taken out. Lemus uses that Featherstorm to dodge out of the Tibbers. And Lakai, though, he's flashing forward. Lemus is getting so low. And the Blade Caller leaves Lakai on 1. Daystar, though, looking to turn it around. Isn't going to be able to. And that's 4 found here for Beyond. Out of what looked like nothing. Only Lived remains. Importantly, though, no minion wave in the vicinity. Maybe they're able to hold on, but they should lose the Baron for this.
We'll see. Do they go towards their Baron, or are they just going to try break this? Looks like they're going to try break. Can they actually play for the end? I wouldn't think so. There's 20 seconds on Lemus, but, I mean, double
Those
TP
teleports,
means they kind of want to, right?
They're definitely committing. They have 10 seconds on this Xayah, 20 on the LeBlanc. Why Not does spawn now, but it's a 3v5. And these are the members with the gold. It's Daystar and Lemus with the gold, but luckily, at least for Bliss, there isn't going to be a game ending right now. Beyond, though, should have free will to be able to look towards this Baron.
If you're Bliss, though, maybe you fight right now.
They are baiting. Ooh. They do land the hook onto Liv, who pops the Dominus, and they're looking now. 116, going to be forced to use that Zhonya's Kongyue. Oh my god, Why Not finds the kill? But what's it for? They're managing to kill 1116, and Daystar and Lemus. They're trying to find the damage. Lakai, though, enters the defensive stance and can't take damage from auto attacks. It's only Lemus. It's Lemus and Why Not. He's going to get the recall off. It's a 3v2. But heroic effort there from Why Not to find that kill onto Kongwei. It still ultimately is, though, Beyond, who pick up that team fight win.
Does feel difficult at this point to pick up those team fight wins, right? Just when you're down this far in goal. But I do like that Bliss went for that. You know, they managed to find that window where Beyond haven't quite reset yet. Still have a lot of gold in their pockets, unspent. And they punished them. As Dragon has started up and there is no smite, but with this much damage coming through, I think it will drop before Why Not gets anywhere near it, and resets will come through. This is really good, I think. You know, not a lot of health, not a lot of power really left over from Beyond. Initial engage, I think Kongwei very nearly kills Why Not here, but Why Not with the Dust Blade manages to get out. You'll notice in that fight as well that Betty was looked at by Daystar, but never really dropped below half HP, and the BT just makes it so difficult. I mean, this is a LeBlanc build not built around burst, but sustained DPS and is countered completely by the lifesteal. And you take a look at Betty's score, I mean, he's 4-0-13. Even when his team was somewhat falling behind in the early game, he never wavered, really.
Definitely not. Runan's now picked up for this Zeri, which feels very good.
Lifesteal.
Yeah. He has shield bow, I guess, makes sense. You're against quite a lot of burst, and especially as LeBlanc items come through, is able to start looking to burst you out. Full control over River, though, is afforded here to Beyond. Daystar trying to poke his head in and find some damage. Ultimately, not all that much. Is going for the Void Staff, having picked up the Blighted Jewel, which means Death Cap going to be quite delayed. Lakai has found himself just a natural flank, not having to commit that teleport. He's got a really good position. Daystar does spot him out, and Arkia taking up the brunt of the damage. Lima's going to force that Feather Storm. He's going to find a lot of damage onto Lakai, but Arkia is going to be the first one to go down, or is he? Flashes forward, BD does find it, uses that ult, and on the meantime, Why Not does go down, but massive Blade Caller just not got the damage, as it's only lived against all of Beyond, who will pick up the kill, and they charge towards that Nexus of Bliss to pick up their second win in our best of 5.
Yeah, they will just march to victory here. Very far ahead now, 23-8. And look at that damage in that last team fight there from Betty. He put up the numbers. Admittedly, Lemus wasn't too far behind. But at the end of the day, it is Beyond that are going to pick up game number 2 here. And now, you know, moving towards match point pretty early on. And I will say that it was a much better game from Bliss, especially the early game was a lot more competitive. I think it really just came down to just small mistakes, right? A small macro mistake here, a bit of teamfight execution there, and unfortunately, Beyond are just a bit too strong in those regards, and they're not even the strongest in the PCS at those, you'd have to say, right? When you're looking at the likes of J-Team or PSG that will punish even harder, it's difficult, I think, to clean up these things going into Game 3. You know, it's not something that you can easily Band-Aid fix. It's something you kind of need to scrim and focus on. I do hope that Bliss kind of run it back with a lot of the early game aggression, and I think maybe if you can find a jungler that honestly just has more consistent output, because I think there were times in that game where Why Not found some really good picks, right? There was the one on to Kongwei in the bot side. There were the 2, I guess, assists that he picked up in the early bot river, which were great. I mean, that's showing that the Rengar has potential, but unfortunately, it's a champ that is hit or miss, right? And so when there are some fights you're putting up a ton of performance, some when you're putting up none, that's when you really want something like the Maokai, that no matter what, you just press R and you're basically a whole team comp by yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder, a lot of that also, I think, when Beyond found their way back into that game, stemmed off Why Not and that mid lane dive. And admittedly, that felt a little bit unlucky because his ult went invisible just as he was seen on that minion wave. And if that didn't happen, like if it was just 0.5 of a second slower, then perhaps he finds that kill onto 1116, and it's even better then for Team Bliss. But ultimately, he did get found, and he picks up that kill. And honestly, 1116 had a bit of a game for himself, because he was constantly finding kills, constantly finding picks. I mean, Keras as well. I mean, as well as Arkia, he was getting caught a lot. And while oftentimes, if you're ahead and you're the Alistair getting caught, feels pretty good, because then your team can collapse, they weren't able to, because they'll try and collapse, and ultimately, Why Not would jump in and just get blown up, and Lemus and as well as Daystar kind of left in their own devices were just going down. And I want to also say that Daystar there was having a real hell of a time, because pretty much every single team fight, bar a couple, that Nautilus ult was just held. And every time Daystar would go forward, they'd just Naut ult him and then follow up on that. And it felt pretty hard to play the LeBlanc in those fights. And there was also never really a time where he could play the LeBlanc around skirmishes and look for poke.
Yeah, I think so. And I think as well, LeBlanc is a champ that honestly doesn't function that well from behind with this build, because you see there that, sure, you get your items, you get your Lich Bane, you get all the poke you need, but by that time, if Betty has a lifesteal, it kind of just doesn't matter. And realistically, there isn't another kind of great target to hit, right? You could maybe hit the Kha'Zix, but ultimately, as long as Betty doesn't die, right, it doesn't matter. If Annie gets off her cooldowns before she dies, it doesn't really matter. So it's, I don't know, it's difficult, I think, to beat a LeBlanc when your team is losing, just naturally, and they were winning at some point, though,
Definitely.
right? Like, they had the gold lead, I think, maybe for the first 20 minutes, so it was looking really, really good for that point, at least.
Definitely, and good signs, I think, leveling up throughout the series. And honestly, you can't write them off, because I think that game, they really had the chance to win there. And if not for a few mistakes, again, that sort of unlucky, if you will, play around mid, if that didn't happen, it could have been a whole different game. I mean, they picked up the second dragon, they picked up the first herald. They also didn't use the herald, which is another thing
That's
I think
true.
we should
I forgot
mention,
about that.
which happened at the same time as that. He had the herald, went in. Unfortunately, he got killed and lost the herald during that time. And admittedly, we see that in the PCS countless times. I don't know how many times we've seen a herald get picked up and not used, but it did happen again this game, and perhaps with that being used, it might have even been a different game then too.
Could be. I think you're right as well to say to not count them out, because something we said before the cast, completely off stream, was that we feel like Beyond is a team that once figured out, you kind of just will win every game against them, right?
Yeah.
And that maybe Bliss are getting closer to figuring it out, right? That game looked a lot more competitive than the first game, so unfortunately they only have one, potentially one more game here to figure that out, right? If they could get a win here, even if it's not clean, I could definitely see them coming out with a reverse sweep, right? But that's the thing, is finding that first win.
Yeah, look, if you take your mind back to last playoffs, I don't know how many reverse sweeps we saw, but we saw a lot of reverse sweeps. So if there's something I've learned in the PCS playoffs, is not to count out a team when they're 0-2 down, because PSG in their first series, 0-2 down and went on to win it all. We'll take a look at the replay here, and this was when Why Not did manage to get onto Betty, but just did not have the damage to really take him out, and Arkia again just being focused down.
Yeah, this felt like a big turning point. I think this is a double TP coming in. If Why Not had just waited, maybe let Betty commit a bit further forward, and then go in with your double TP, I think this could be a very different fight. But the way it played out just felt like it was kind of 3 separate fights, and Beyond it, just their comp is a lot easier to execute, I suppose. All they really need to do is ball up in 5v5, right? They don't rely on poke landing. They don't rely on flanks from Rengar. And so if those things aren't executed on by Bliss, it's just going to be Beyond that come out with that team fight win. And damage there, I think, really tells the story. Something that kind of went under the radar, I think, was Lakai on the Jax. I think it was 6-0-6 at the end.
Wow.
And I think that while, lived on the Renekton, did kind of get what he wanted early, right? He got plates and they secured the Herald. The Herald didn't turn into anything, and they didn't get any team fight wins off the Renekton, so eventually the Jax just outscales.
Yeah, definitely. And that we've seen that quite often on the PCS. I think is probably our most observed top lane matchup is probably the Jax versus the Renekton.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it does go like that. The Renekton gets ahead, gets to his Gourd Drinker, and then you fight around that Renekton. You don't take fights unless the Renekton's involved, because he pretty much secures the fact that you will win those fights. But I mean, who do you think is going to be MVP? It's probably Betty.
I think I'd give it to Betty. I think I'd give it to Betty.
I think Kyrie's or 116 could pick it up.
Okay. I think Betty should have it because he was the one not inting while the rest of his team's kind of inting around him. I think to be the top damage in a game where the enemy ADC starts 2-0 and double buffs is very impressive.
It certainly is. And it is made easier by the fact he has static shift. So
that is true. He's my goat, though.
Sits in mid wave, presses Q on wave, job done. But he did play well, obviously. It is not the easiest to play Xayah into the team comp he was up against, because it's pretty easy for Renekton to find your way into a Xayah at some stage of the game, as well as, of course, LeBlanc and Rengar. Will be Betty who picks it up, 91.3% kill participation. 6-0-15 was his final score, with 31.1% of his team's damage.
It's just so reliable.
Yeah,
right?
he is.
Even if the team is falling behind, Betty is going to be...
Unless he's on lethality Varus.
That's true, but that champ's unreliable.
True.
Why not engage on there and just gets blown apart, really? And it's really hard, I think, for Lemus as well, because if you end up kind of the one DPS threat in your team, you're just going to get attacked all fight long. And while
smoked.
Daystar he does damage, he feels more like a pest than a real carry threat, right?
There's
It's
a little
something that if the
mosquito
fight... Yeah, exactly. It's like if the fight is long enough, eventually the LeBlanc damage will, end up being a problem. But if all your members just kind of get blown up before then, you never really get the chance to, I guess, show the strength of your champ.
And that was kind of the story of the game, because it was quite often that Arkia was trying to look for anything to find. You know, Arkia was trying to put down wards. He got hooked by Kira's, I don't know, like 13 times, but that will do us for game number 2. Come back when we are back after the break, and we'll see if Blizz can turn it around, look for their reverse sweep, and find their first win in the PCF playoffs.
I thought I told you once, but I'll remind you. There's certain things you're not supposed to do. I saw you in my dreams and you were falling. No way to know if it will all come true. Let this be a war. I want it, but let this be a warning, 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 a warning, warning, a warning, 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 a warning. Let this be a warning, 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 a warning, 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 a warning. But let this be a time and time again. I've seen you around here. You're playing with fire, don't know if you knew. So let me make this clear, a cloud is forming. The storm is heading right in front of you. Let this be a but let this be a warning, 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 a warning, warning, a warning, 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 a warning. Let this be a warning, 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 a warning, 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 a warning. Let this be a warning. Let this be a warning.
Falling to the ground, would you pick me up? If my world was crashing down, would you make it stop? I do for you, but would you do the same? When everyone's gone, are you gonna stay? When demons come through, would you push them away? Would you push them away? Are you gonna stay? If I had a nightmare, tell me, are you right there? Pulling me out, me out. If I was too high, yeah, tell me, are you right there? Pulling me down, me down. You the right alone. So tell me, are you right there? Tell me, are you right there? When it goes down, goes down.
just imagine all of the hours that I put in running and cutting the passion. All of them clap, big applause. Wish I could pause all their reactions. Ooh, we know I never had a losing streak. I know you see what adrenaline's doing to me. I've been kicking game, Bruce Lee. You ain't in the game too weak. Make them feel the pain too deep. Tell them get out the kitchen, you can't take the heat. What I'm doing, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in. I do it. Yeah, can't stop. Nah, won't stop. Yeah, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch.
Ladies and gentlemen, game number 3 on the cards here, and I think before we get into it, I want to discuss the Maokai, because it feels like possibly a bit of a problem around the Maokai being banned on both sides by Team Bliss, and it's been a very high-impact jungler, and if you're having to ban it regardless of side, feels a little bit bad.
It does, especially because Beyond is a team that normally bans Maokai and Sejuani just to open up, going away to playing more carry junglers. So just having one of those kind of locked bans almost, just being banned away from Bliss or by Bliss every time, that feels really bad, and I think that is making the Bliss draft just that extra bit more difficult, maybe inflexible even is the word, right? Because there's a lot of things that you want to take away, right? If maybe instead of the Maokai, you could ban the Annie, and suddenly that would be, potentially a very different game. Because I think that when you look at the likes of 116, right, you're thinking enabling mids, and I think the 3 best for that right now, Annie, Nico, and LeBlanc. So if you can ban 2 and pick the LeBlanc away, that already sets you up for a really good game, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And on that LeBlanc, I want to touch on Daystar, because I think so far, he's been kind of the shining light here on the side of Bliss, and maybe getting him something that has more ability to carry, because obviously the LeBlanc can, the Azir can, but you have to be able to play around it and build your team comp around it to allow that. And at least for now, that hasn't really been happening. Lived, looking into our souls.
Yeah.
He did this last split too.
Maybe that was the difference. But anyway, coming back to the Daystar point, I think you're right that, champs like LeBlanc and Azir, at least with their current builds, they can have impact early, but their biggest strength really is the later stages of the game, right? And I think picking a champ for Daystar that its strongest spike is maybe around the 1 item mark, or maybe the 2 items, is probably the place to be. Oh, he broke eye contact first.
He did. Camera 1. The camera 1.
It did.
Makai, he's not going to do the same.
But
He's focused.
I think if Daystar can, maybe the Jace is something we look at. But even then, I think Jace is, well, again, it has that big spike on the 1 item. You're really looking towards Jace 3 items and fully stacked Manamune as the big spike, right? So I'm not sure where he's going to look. Maybe something like what Chiefs did last split and just play the Cinder of Vi and make Betty's life really difficult. I wouldn't say no to that.
Definitely. And it's Bliss on blue side again. And I think, obviously, they looked better on the blue side, so it makes a whole lot of sense to take that one. Nico, Rel, same bans as last game. Will it be the Maokai last? Both sides, same bans thus far. I really think you can't afford to really ban the Maokai. I think you have to get rid of Annie.
I think, yeah. I think almost be willing to give the Maokai over.
Yeah.
It's not Kongo's greatest champ. Okay, they choose to ban it away instead. Will we just see the draft from last game run back?
Yep.
Guys, is that previous bans? So same bans. Last time that first pick was a LeBlanc. I think you still go for it just because you need to take it away. But honestly, I'm not a huge fan of it.
It's almost certainly answered by the Annie. They're hovering a bunch of stuff right now, but I mean, it's 116. He has so much success when he plays the Annie that you do expect it to just be locked in. And there we are. We do see it. Now, what's the second pick? Not going to be the Karthus. Honestly, I feel like you can just take the Viego. I mean, maybe we're just actually getting an entire repeat of the last draft.
might.
Kyrus has looked very good on the Nautilus in both games.
Been doing very well for himself.
I think that's something I want to touch on too, is it feels like a big difference between what we're seeing from Team Bliss here and what we're seeing from BYG, is that BYG have a better understanding on when they can look to go for wards. And they've just taken the Zeri.
They take this area, and I wonder if that's so that they can pick up Viego in the first 3. There are a lot of engaged supports that I'm sure carriers would be comfortable on, so I'm sure they're not married to the idea of picking up the Nautilus. The Xayah is the kind of obvious response here. I'm a little surprised that they actually prioritize Zeri above the Xayah, though. Definitely a little different.
Ooh.
So the Nautilus is taken away. Now, from Beyond, do you take your support here, or are you just going to take the Viego? Because you could take Viego and ban out junglers, and it would be really hard for Why Not. And I think there are enough engaged supports left that you could let it happen. Alternatively, KRZ could flex his muscles on the Rakan.
Definitely a very, very good Rakan player. So wouldn't be too surprised to see this just locked in.
Okay. I guess they're happy with how the jungle matchup ended up last game anyway, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And second phase bans should be pretty different this time around. I think Bliss's bans last time, I can't remember what the first one was, but the second one was Poppy, and I felt
It was
like...
Viego.
Okay, yeah, Viego Poppy. Felt like the Poppy ban was a bit misplaced. See what they end up looking for this time, though. Okay, Kindred ban once again. Makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense.
So far, most things in the draft the exact same. There is obviously the Nautilus on Bliss and no Alistair. It'll be the Rakan instead. Viego banned. All bans remaining the same. I don't remember BYG's last ban, but
No, I'm not sure.
let's see. Do they just continue to target junglers? It doesn't feel like you really have to. Okay, they do.
Nocturne, okay. I mean, I think just trying to make Betty's life a bit easier.
Yeah. They did. Oh, they banned Vi last time. So
Okay.
Vi's open.
Ooh,
Oh.
banned by Bliss.
Vi is no longer open. That seems even weirder than Poppy.
Yeah, I mean
the
you almost
LeBlanc-
never see Vi picked into... Okay, well, the Poppy is instantly locked in. You almost never see that Vi picked up into the Xayah. The Poppy's interesting, because I think on paper, right, it's really good, but I'm not sure I like it being picked up here. The reason it's good, right, is obviously it's good against the comp, it's one of the premier junglers, and it can go top into Jax. But I think for what Beyond strengths are, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, if this is someone like Hana instead of Kongyue, it does kind of make more sense. So this is really Beyond, I think, playing to the meta as opposed to their strengths. And I think so far in the series, it seems like they can just, you know, kind of succeed on whatever. But I think if you saw this draft out of Beyond and they were against a very high-tier team, I wouldn't be too happy with it, with the Poppy at least.
But on the other side, Bliss pretty much going with the exact same thing as last game. And what gives me concerns around this is that they started the game off with an early 2 kills, early 3 kills even, on the bot side, and then still weren't able to get the job done. And so it feels like if you're just going straight back into it, pound for pound, it seems like Beyond are going to feel pretty confident with themselves. And admittedly, while they no longer will have the Kha'Zix, you have it, the Poppy almost seems better in many ways, because you have only AP damage coming out of this LeBlanc. And now this LeBlanc doesn't really offer all that much in terms of AP damage. And so Kongyue, if he does get some armor items behind him, will become almost unkillable in this game.
Yeah, I think that on paper, BYG kind of smoked them in the draft.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think the Vi ban's really, really weird because you want the Vi into the Zeri.
Yeah.
You honestly, you don't want the Poppy against you, to be fair. You've pretty much got full AD.
It does feel weird, right? Because I think that while I wasn't a huge fan of the Poppy ban, I think the Vi ban is even worse because it should be a self ban. I mean, how often do you see Vi picked into Xayah in the PCS? I'd say the answer is almost never. In fact, you just don't see a lot of Vi full stop, right? They kind of stopped playing it other than maybe Gemini here and there. So it was really weird, and I think it actually limited their options a lot more. And I'm not too sure if they're going to have that same early strength as they did last game. We'll see, because last game, I wouldn't say it was off the back of any particular champion. It was honestly just Bliss playing the early game out pretty well. But here, it feels like Beyond not only got a really good team comp on paper, they got basically the best champ for every player in their team except for maybe Kongyue. So it feels like Beyond kind of got away with murder in the draft here. But hey, maybe this is Bliss saying that we just want to try something a little different. See how it goes anyway.
Yeah, and admittedly, I think some slip-ups that we mentioned last time. The likes of Arkia getting caught out a few times. The mid-play that happened with Why Not on the Rengar. If those don't happen, we probably had a whole lot of a different game on our hands, and maybe they realize that and say, look, we could have won this game, and we can win this game, so we'll pretty much throw it back. I mean, they've got essentially the exact same draft. They've subbed out the Alistair for a Nord and the Rengar for a Kha'Zix. So it feels very, very similar in nature. And admittedly, if they do play it a little bit cleaner, they should have been favoured to win the last game. So we'll see. It's really onus on them to make sure it is that little bit cleaner.
Yep.
Make sure Lemus is in a position to be able to carry. And I mean, ultimately, I do feel like they can do it. It'll just be onto how they execute.
I think with the Nautilus, it does make it a bit easier to punish the Zeri as well. Just having that point and click is really, really nice. So that could go a long way. I think this is the first game so far that Beyond haven't managed to get some sort of level 1 advantage as well, even if it's as small as getting a ward in the enemy jungle. So managing to shut that down is a better start for Team Bliss.
Definitely.
Will, of course, just come down to that execution. And I'm kind of excited to see Kongwei on the Poppy, because it's not a champ that you would think he is particularly good at, honestly, or plays towards his style, but you have to feel like this is such a good comp for the Poppy that it almost might not matter.
Definitely. Plays very well into most champs. Hook lands from Arkia, might not have wanted that. He's getting pretty low, going to be forced to use their potion early, and look how aggressive Beyond are playing on this wave, using the vision of that bush. Lima's trying to push this back. In fact, he will be able to. One of the good points about having a Xayah, as we see an invade. Kongwei's going to find Why Not. Should be able to find something here. It's a lot of damage. Phase Rush procced. Why Not getting very low. Will have to retreat to his tower. Is going to be able to get that recall off. Did not manage to get the Gromp. It was Kongwei who picked that one up. So already a nice advantage in the jungle here for Kongwei on the Poppy.
That was very weird. You know, red into blue invade, or in a Gromp, I suppose. I feel a little different, and maybe now he's just going to try look for something mid. So a lot of pressure put down very
Definitely
early.
Flash forward. Is not going to land the stun there on the wall as Daystar will be forced to flash away. But a lot of pressure exerted here early from Kongwei on this Poppy. Already affecting the jungle, already affecting
Is he
mid
going
lane.
straight bot?
He is going straight bot, and Lemus and Arkia. Lemus getting knocked up here. There's a lot of follow-up, and Poppy's in the area. No flash, but certainly will be able to get here onto the Xayah. All three positions of the map here ganked by Kongwei, and he picks up his first blood in that bottom lane as Arkia is going to flash away on the most minute amount of health, but ultimately will survive. But it is Kongwei running a clinic here on the map.
Yeah, now that is a jungler. I mean, look at that. He just kind of one jungle and then also one mid and bot at the same time. I wonder if Lemus could have flashed out there. Because it feels like he could have flashed to E and probably would have been fine. Instead, chose to hold it. Hold it might be a mistake. But you're really happy with how the game is going as Kongwei here.
Definitely. Massive advantages found across the map. We critiqued the possibility of his Poppy, but certainly we're eating our words at this point.
Seems like he is just the king.
Definitely. And you see the effects. It's come onto mid lane now.
Yeah.
Daystar struggling a lot more than he perhaps would have.
Kongwei doesn't have red, so he needs to be careful, but does have that bot and mid pro. I think probably does just want to cross back to his top side. Might make a visit to mid lane first. This cares. Ooh, he's going to get hooked
Hook
up.
will land. Why Not is in the area. Are they going to be able to look for the snare? They, in fact, do find it, but not before Kyrus gets himself to safety. Okay. Pretty nice trades from himself up in this top lane. Very, very well versed in the Jax versus Renekton matchup.
Yep.
Gone up against the best of them. Dr. Ivor, of course.
Maybe now Kongwei looking for even more on this top side. He still has his whole top side up as well. He can go to his red buff at any point. But he's going to try to take away maybe one more of these camps before he does so. He has a smite. I think it's going to come down to a contest.
Has not recalled, so Why Not should be favored in this engagement. Oh, nice steadfast presence. Will secure the ground there onto this Kha'Zix. And Phase Rush, of course, gets him out nice and quickly. Trades again bot. Lemus will not find the root as Betty will use that heal. Goes forward, flash. It will be a kill here. 2v2 found. Beyond having some great success. Arkia now trying to get away. Will there be the knockout come from Kyrus? There will. but it's not actually going to land because Arkia will go down beforehand, and Betty picks himself up a second kill. He's 2-0-1, 5 minutes in on this Zeri. Why not even able to trade up topside as there is a pink ward already found by Beyond.
Things quickly getting out of control. It is always going to be difficult up against the Beyond bot lane. They are kind of just 2v2 demons. And with that gank played towards bot, just made it even easier. See how this ended up starting. I mean, it's looking sort of decent here for Blitz. They seem to be able to crash this in the 2v2. It's an aggressive hook from Arkia. And I think overstays a bit too long. Probably could have disengaged, but...
Lemus was autoing minions that whole time. And so there wasn't the route that came through.
Yeah. Ended up being very one-sided. And a double kill to Betty this early. I mean, you saw what happened last game when it was the other way around, right? Lemus picking up those first 2 kills. But Betty, off to this start this early, seems just unplayable, really.
Yeah. 0-2-0, the Xayah. The opposite of last game.
Yep. And Beyond, they are just ahead in every lane right now. Top lane really the closest part, but Lakai's about to pick up a big wave. So ahead in all 3 lanes and the jungle is a very good start to game 3 here. Ooh. Base is cancelled, and 116 does not have TP. So it's going to be forced to stick around here, and that could maybe be a window for Bliss to punish. And he does have flash, but they have a lot of CC.
Yeah, and Kongyue is not here, but you have to be scared after what happened early game. Arkia looking for the Hex Flash hook. Will not land. 1116 goes back to just farming. Kongyue and Kira is though in the area. Arkia might have to be careful as he goes to lane, but it looks like BYG should be pretty happy just picking up this dragon. 7 minutes in. Means they should maybe even have the tempo to get back up to that Rift Herald in time for that 8-minute spawn timer.
And getting a dragon that early as a Zeri feels pretty different.
Okay, they're fighting. A lot of damage onto Lemus, but it's a lot of damage back there. Found onto Kira's, but ultimately it's 1 kill found. Betty picking himself up a 3rd. Already making great headway into picking up the static shiv. Kongyue though, flash forward, will secure the wall bang. Arkia misses the hook, and it's another kill for the side of BYG. 2 for Kongyue, in fact. 3 for Betty. And plates as well. This game has become a bit of a disaster game.
It has. It does feel pretty out of control very early on. I mean, if you're going for the 3v2 on bot lane and you end up losing someone, you know, you lose a kill, don't even trade one back, that is pretty sad, especially given that it's a Zeri as well. Not even a champ that's known for the early game.
Oh, look at bot lane items.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous at this point. And it's hard to say, you know, while I did go into this game saying that I think Beyond have a much stronger draft, it's hard to blame this on draft, right? This is pretty much just gameplay. I think not, and a lot of respect paid towards Kongyue's ganks. And I think as well, question marks, of course, just around the scaling nature of, especially the Kha'Zix LeBlanc. Not a mid-jungle that wants to contest early, and you can see what happened when Beyond do have that mid-jungle with a lot more pressure on the map.
Yeah, Daystar stunned up, will be able to get away. But as Arkia might have to pay for his sins.
Ooh.
Kongyue looking for something, will be finding the knockout, but not the damage.
He wanted it.
He was very, very close.
That's a big chunk though, and I wonder if they can just go straight to Herald off that. I think they will be able to. I mean, Arkia is nowhere near 6. He's very far away still. Carriage should be relatively close. Did get extra XP from bot lane. Of course, has got 4 assists to his name. So I think this should go over, and this is another big problem because giving Herald when you have the Renekton feels really weird. But it's just the state of how the rest of the map has been going. Liv, to his credit, is the only one that's kind of keeping it stable. You know, Daystar, he did get ganked early, so it's somewhat to be expected, but it's starting to fall behind, lost a plate. And with so much pressure lost on the map, the Herald is now picked up. Beyond getting absolutely everything they want.
Definitely. Daystar being forced to recall here, does not have teleport. And with Betty in the mid lane, it's just going to be constant waves coming in. Static Shiv already completed, of course. Lemus, though, giving some time to himself to try and find some items. Really wants to be able to cash in that cull. Maybe find a plate here, but it seems like at least 1116 feels a little bit too strong to push into too hard. Liv, though, might be the new target of Kongyue. Is able to slice and dice away as recalls do come in.
They will. Ooh. Is he going to stay? Is that ult disadvantage? So probably wants to get out of here. Why Not is spotted there on that red buff. He's walking back towards bot lane, has the Herald, and bot tower has already taken a lot of damage. Alternatively, with Betty already in mid, could drop it there. Daystar is very, very far away from a shiv of his own, only has the Merc Treads. Trades a lot of damage there onto Betty, but that's going to be cooldowns down for the near future. Back towards mid. I want to see where this Herald goes. I think placing it mid probably is the smartest decision. Arkia needs to be a little careful.
Yeah, quickness used. Grand Entrance will secure that knock up. Arkia, no flash. He's going to be going down. But who picks up the kill? Looks like Kyrres might just be forced to take it. Actually, Betty committing the ult there to ensure he gets the gold from that. He's 4-0-2. He's having a game for himself. And at least for us over here at the PCS, we've seen the games where Betty gets this far ahead. They don't often last much longer than 20 minutes. And so Bliss really going to have to find something here to stop the bleeding of the Rift Herald going down now, as well as Daystar being the next target of Betty's antics. Why Not though? Looking for the turn, flash forward from Daystar, will not find the kill, and Betty should be able to just walk away. But it's Kongwei coming through, landing all the CC he needs to pick up himself a kill. It is 116 though, should be going down here to Lemus. Actually, getting the flash out, and he's still staying alive. A lot more used here by the Xayah than you perhaps would want to. Does pick himself up the kill though. So it is a bit of gold to your AD carry.
Importantly, does stop the potential of a perfect game coming out. I think 116... Ooh, okay, so he got TP behind. I think just got cancelled here by the Xayah, yeah. So didn't realize. Bit unfortunate timing for him. Did invest the flash as well to try get out. And well, he did get quite a bit out of the Xayah. It's a costly death for sure. As far as deaths go, though, I'd say it's pretty good. Get the flash out of the Xayah, which I think ahead of the dragon spawning. Yeah, ahead of this dragon spawning now. Feels like with Xayah so behind in items, and of course without the sums, without the ult, should just be given over to Beyond.
Yeah, and you see it on your screens there. Gold difference steadily getting out of hand. Is also the player gold on your screen as well. It is the 4 members of BYG, excluding Kyrres, who are at the top. 116 though, being looked at again. Why Not flashes forward. We'll be able to secure that kill. It goes over to Daystar. Quickness comes through though. And Why Not? He's in no man's land. Flash over the wall. It's another kill for Betty. As now Lakai and Kyrres being targeted. Lemus trying to walk forward on this. It's a 4v4 ahead of this dragon, but ultimately, Why Not being dead means no jungle available for Team Bliss. So it would just come down to a brawl to try and stop the dragon. And in fairness, maybe if Lived can get onto Betty, there's a chance. Does have the flash, still has ultimate. And there is follow-up coming through from the LeBlanc. Hex flash though, Kongwei will find the ground there onto Daystar. Betty picks himself up one. He's looking for more as Lemus is limping away on such little amount of health. Lived flashes the wall, he's trying to look for that one kill, but he's not able to find it, and now he's just trying to head towards his tower. And it might be him going down, it is. Betty is godlike. Betty's completely unstoppable, and Why Not just getting back onto the map? It's found by Kongwei, who's having an absolute time of his life here against the Kazakhs. Finds himself another kill as Why Not had respawned.
Yeah, I guess that's single dingle, and you're really, I think, struggling to find a way back into this game for Team Bliss. Ultimately, they need too much time to have this LeBlanc scale up and to have Xayah somehow become a relevant carry again, because you wouldn't even be surprised to see Betty getting towards those 3 items before that Xayah even has 2. Give me insanely far ahead, and this nice pick onto 1116 was found, but you can see just, if you look at the minimap, so far up with no side lane priority, which means the rest of Beyond just can come and collapse, of course. Why Not? He was found out very early. And then I think they might have been out here as Team Bliss, but they went for the re-engage, and you do kind of wonder why, because a lot of cooldowns have already been used. I guess the reason they went for it is because they found Betty, but it really cost them, right? You'll see here, I believe it's the Naught hook that starts it off. But without the follow-up, without the damage, there's no burst really remaining and not a lot of relevant cooldowns. Betty just kites back.
Oh.
And he never even drops below 90% health, right? There was nothing there. And teamfight execution continues to plague Team Bliss. And while, of course, they're not ahead at this time, you could at least stop the bleeding. 2 items picked up for Betty before that Mythic is even completed there for Lemus.
And it's second Rift Shield. It's spawning now. Why not sitting in the bush, but you feel like if it's face checked by the Poppy, you're not going to have the best time. They do find Betty though. Betty going to have everything dropped on him, but Kongwei with the steadfast presence just stands in front of him, and Betty remains at half HP, and there's no threat onto him anymore. Finds 1 kill, he's healed up. Oh my god, look at the damage coming through from Zeri. There's ult popped, Lemus is next to go down, finds the Blade Caller for that root, but not before the rest of his team goes down. There's no one but Daystar left alive, and there's not even a Baron to contest, as Daystar might just be going down, and Betty confirms that ace there for BYG just 15 minutes into this game.
That is just disgusting. 10-0-4.
Yeah.
He is actually my GOAT.
Betty having quite a game.
Yeah. Look at 1116, 0-2-1. I wish that were me. Okay, but now Herald is picked up, and with that, they could honestly push for the end. Maybe not yet, but maybe around the 20 minutes, 19 minutes, if they do manage to get a pick. It's not easy, I think, for Team Bliss to withstand this siege, because they are just so far ahead. Team Bliss, they're definitely desperate at this point, and you understand why. They kind of have to make picks in order to claw back into this game, and you think maybe this is it, where they have lots of flanks onto Betty, but he has a really good wall to go through, and Kongwei does a great job of just keeping him alive. Arca, once again, he goes for it, but look how fast his health bar drops.
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
And there, I mean, it's like Betty has the... He just has like full build almost, it feels like. Everyone else has pretty much nothing. He's just insanely far ahead. He's got 3 items now.
And only the Kraken in response for Lemus at the moment.
Kongwei's items as well are pretty ridiculous. No one's going to be touching this Poppy.
Great entrance will land onto him. He does still have the ability to use Slice and Dice, but with Steadfast Presence he won't. And what a knock-up on Kongwei. It's the top side going down yet again. Arkia now trying to run, but Betty, he's not going to want to let that happen. Will be able to try and stop any further play, but it's going to be Kongwei. Follows through. It's another kill there. Legendary is Betty. 12-0-5 now. As Lemus, the next target, he's running the wrong way. This is just inevitable. Who picks it up is really the only question. Looks like Kongwei might do it. In fact, he will.
The Herald was dropped bot lane. Looks like they got the bot tier 2. It's going to damage the tier 3, but I don't believe it'll go down. Few autos onto it.
Yeah, Daystar the next look. Oh,
Wow.
wow. The CC chaining from Beyond has actually just been insane this game, and you're seeing it there. LeBlanc, usually one of the most slippery members of the League of Legends roster, gets stunned up, Steadfast Present comes through, Counter-Strike stun comes through, and Liv now going to be going down as well. Is it going to be a 13th? It is. And there's not much to say. 18 minutes in, Betty now, you know, 13 kills, looking towards this bot lane inhib. Why not is respawning back on the map? But what can a Kazakhs do when you're 3 levels behind the 80 carry at 18 minutes? Doesn't feel like a whole lot. Really can be done.
No. I think if you're Bliss, there really is just no way to come back in this game. And it feels really bad, especially because you had a somewhat competitive game 2 and then just to follow up with this one. But I'm sure they'll be able to look back at the series and take away a lot from it. It does feel just, unless there's some colossal throw from Beyond, it really is unlosable. Not often you see a lead that's this big at only 19 minutes into the game.
Definitely not. Kongwei, he's pretty confident. Maybe we'll be able to pick up 116's first kill. They're giving it to him. He gets it. It's the first kill there for Annie, and Lemus now. He's not long for this world. Certainly running the wrong way yet again. Kongwei picking up that one. And now, honestly, there's 50 seconds until this Baron. Do BYG need it? Probably not. Probably can just start to work on these other objectives that are on the map. Obviously, the top lane inhib tower, the mid lane inhib tower. But why not, though? Trying to get himself a dragon. Looks like they might be able to. So it does stop the dragon win con for at least 5 minutes and gives himself some gold from that objective shutdown. But will it really matter?
Doesn't feel like it. Feels like it's the only thing you really can do, though. Just keep playing the game as you should and just hope something goes wrong for Beyond. But they are so far ahead, and I think that it's going to be Bliss's base falling in the not-too-distant future here. One inhib's already down. The second one about to fall. Daystar, he's hitting that bot tower which could be a problem. There isn't a lot of wave clear without him.
Oh, and that flash forward. It's an immediate double kill, triple kill. He's looking here for the Penta. Won't find the CC needed on to live, but there is a lot of damage coming through. They're going to look for it. They've done this before. Betty will not be able to find it. This should have been that the Penta timed out. Daystar might be just giving it to him. Penta does time out. Legendary, though. The score is 2-28. Only lived does remain. It's 20 minutes. The Baron being looked at. Liv goes forward. Might be able to find a kill. Does. It's 116 who goes down as Arkia does respawn. But ultimately, attention now onto the towers around the Nexus. And now the Nexus itself. Why not? Trying to find something at the end. But certainly does not have the damage as he will just be completely eliminated. It's Liv's turn. They're finding a lot of CC. Betty might go down. He does. It's a big shutdown. It might even be another one. It's the second time in the series we have seen something. But Lakai, he gets out. The Hex Gate secures his safety, but the base is in shambles. There's a bit of gold given to Lemus. A couple of shutdowns, but it all feels just too little, too late.
It does, and Daystar might just let the game end. Honestly, not even the worst idea at this point. I do feel the game is pretty gone.
Yeah.
Betty, I love how every time Betty bases, he just buys
An item.
at least a full item.
Yeah.
I think there he bought BT and the Zeal.
Yeah, he's quite ahead, this man.
Yeah. Oh, you do feel bad for Bliss, right? Because it feels like a game that you kind of have to play out, but realistically, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, it is 1.5 items to 4.5 in terms of 80 carries. And you've seen the gold difference there. Almost reached 20k even, which is a K gold lead per minute. Why not? Hex Gates in to his demise. Lakai picking himself up that one. Has popped the ult. And Daystar trying to kite him around. It is Liv now turning up. Does get stunned up by the counter-strike. And actually might just be in trouble himself. He's trying to get away. But Betty now turning his attention towards this Nexus. It'll be 22 minutes. It will be beyond taking the series 3-0 in a fairly decisive manner.
I think so. You know, you maybe looked signs of life, I think, in game number 2 for Bliss, but unfortunately Beyond just are the stronger team, and it showed there. I think game number 3 definitely wasn't the best side of Bliss. I don't think the draft, went the way they did or went the way they wanted, and the gameplay certainly didn't go the way they wanted. I think I would like to see, I guess for Bliss next week, because they will fall that lower bracket. I can't remember which team they versed.
They were second, right? So they're against first. They're against CFO.
Okay, so I think that CFO is another one of those teams that is really going to punish you in the early game. I think you have to get more aggressive mid junglers. I think that playing something like LeBlanc Kha'Zix, where LeBlanc really isn't you're not getting the strength of LeBlanc until 2-3 items, right? It's not a champ that's built, at least not with the Static Shiv build, around that 1 item power spike. And I think Kha'Zix as well, it's not as early pressuring as something like the Poppy. I'd much prefer to see Bliss play something just really aggressive in their mid jungle and try and spread that lead to the other lanes. Because I think, like in that second game, if they can keep things even early, or if they can, punish the likes of Kongwei overstepping in the river, clearly, like game 2 was relatively close for a very long time. And it's not like BYG are a perfect team. Again, coming back to Kongwei, he wouldn't respect the priors. He would just walk in and die, right? But you need to have the ability to punish. And I think that in game 3 and game number 1, they really lacked that.
Yep, definitely. And I want to touch back on the Kongwei because from a Poppy that we kind of doubted, let's be real.
We did.
What a monster early game that guy had. Goes in, steals Gromp, pressures Why Not to have to recall, goes mid, gets flash, and then doesn't go to a capital, just runs straight bot, picks himself up a kill onto Lemus. And I mean, honestly, when you've had that much effect in that early of a game, honestly, I want to give him MVP.
Yeah,
but how do you not give it to Betty?
Yeah. I was thinking that too. I swear, in any other game, Kongwei is just the easiest pick for MVP. But you have an 18-1 Xayah, and I think he might have set some DPM records here because he was so insanely
Ooh, that's
ahead.
something to think, yeah. I'll be interested to see when that damage graph comes up because that one fight, the one around Rift Hill, I don't even know if Rift Hill was up, but it was around up the top river.
Where they almost caught him?
Yeah, where they almost caught him, and then he was just unleashing like 400 damage each auto onto all three members. It was like, what do you even do at this point? Because that was before he got his 4th item. That was like 2.5 at that stage.
Yeah.
That was
funny how there's
insane.
only a couple minutes between having 2.5
Yeah.
and 4 items as well. It was insane. You know, the time I started thinking about the DPM was when he was fighting the Renekton bot lane, and the Renekton like heals to half HP and just gets nuked in like another second. You know, it was just free damage.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Might be a new DPM record for the PCS. He has to contest with missions this
Yeah.
year, which was 1660, but I think that could have been a
That
game
could have
to
been
rival. I kind of hope he gets MVP just to see the damage percentage.
Yeah, true. Actually, that would be insane. And to be fair, it is hard to choose. It's either one of the two, to
Yeah.
be fair. But, like, it feels terrible if Kongyue doesn't get it because that game was entirely set up by Kongyue's
think
early
so.
game. The
Yeah.
fact that he was just able to walk into Why Not's jungle, take away that Gromp, and then just get flash, get a kill, and then finally return to doing his camps and being that far ahead. He even went, as soon as that Gromp spawned up topside for Why Not, and went to try and take it again. Obviously, he didn't get it that time, but it was so much pressure exerted, and really, I don't know. It's so hard to not give it to him, but I think when you have like an 18-1 Zeri, it's
She should get it,
Yeah,
probably.
definitely.
I don't know. It is a hard decision to make. It's where do you put your value, really, right? Is it towards the person who gets them ahead in the first place, or is it, you know, towards the person who executes on it? It's hard to say, but yeah.
I think a special moment for me in that game was where Betty just used his ult simply to secure the kill.
Yeah.
When
That was a
Kyrus
very
could have just
Betty
taken
thing
it.
to do.
Kyrus could have just taken it, and he's like, nah, drops his ult, gets the kill for himself. I think it was like his 8th or 9th. It was not like he was in desperate need of gold by any means, but what an insane game out of Beyond. And I think for Bliss here, obviously, things to work on. I think we touched on it. I think the jungle pool really needs to include Maokai because Maokai has been so impactful in the PCS for every team. And I mean, you can look at Hellpigs. They're a team that you didn't really expect to win. But they pick up the Maokai, and it just makes the ease of execution for your team comp just so much easier. And I mean, we'll see here. Honestly, I don't even remember what happens at this stage. I think this
I think it was that 2v2 kill where he hooks forward.
Oh,
yeah,
it is,
he hooks
yeah.
forward and then...
And watch Lima's autoing minions. This wasn't really a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, it was like 3 orders on creeps. I'm not sure if it would have made
would
them
have
win
rooted
it,
them.
but yeah, I think they at least get out. And, I mean, it costs them big because this was 2 kills given over Betty. And, you know, we talk about Betty's Kai'Sa, but Betty's Zeri has to be just behind it.
Yeah, I mean, this is only, what, the 3rd game we've seen of it, and he's pretty much carried on all of them, and wow. Did Zeri out-damage the entire side, or it would be very close? I think he only slightly didn't,
Yeah.
but yeah,
That's
Betty
pretty
almost
insane.
did as much damage as the entire side of Bliss combined. And honestly, for Bliss, again, going into next week, you can kind of be happy, because now you're not going to have to go up against Betty again, because he truly is one of, if not the best AD carry in the region. Like, maybe Wako's up there with him.
Yeah.
But this guy is insane. I mean, he's played in the LPL, he's played in Worlds multiple times, and so you can feel pretty confident in yourself knowing you don't have to go up against this guy, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think that there's not that many teams that LCO will have to face, at least in the near future, that are going to have that level of just guaranteed team fight scaling, right?
Yeah.
Of if this game goes long versus Betty, we're in trouble sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think against CFO, you know, which Bliss will come up against next, there is, while there's perhaps more pressure put on you in the early game, there's definitely the potential that CFO shoot themselves in the foot. Because
Which they've done a lot.
Yeah. I mean, they were on a giant loss streak coming into playoffs. And
Yeah.
I think that if Blizz do kind of take the learnings, I think especially around the early game, they could have a pretty good chance, you know, up against CFO. And Conway, he gets the MVP. I'm
Deserved.
glad he got it.
Me too.
But I will now have to go to Games with Legends and check the damage percent. Yeah.
Because it must have been pretty high. Hell, it was a 20-minute game, right? And it was 33K.
I think it was 22 minutes and 34K. So
Okay,
it's
it
gonna
wasn't
be
as high as
not
missions. Not as high as
no.
missions, but it's getting up there. And honestly, as an AD carry, it almost feels harder than a mid laner because often mid laners have a little bit more damage early. But monster performance, really, from the entire side of Beyond. Admittedly, 116 having a quiet one. But this was where it all stemmed from. I almost would just want to see a replay of all the first minute of Kongyue's plays.
Conway, he did a very different path, I'll have to say.
Yeah, Raptors Gromp.
Yep. But he got that on Gromp.
He did.
Might have been away.
All right, we are going to see it
We
all.
are going to see. Okay.
Heads mid,
Yeah.
sprints there with water walking.
So he comes and ganks mid.
Daystar really should have known something like this could have been coming too.
Yeah, it's hard to respect though. I mean, how
Yeah.
often do you think that a Poppy is going to do this path and then decides, you know what?
He's like,
I'm
"Oh,
not
no."
going back to my jungle. I'll visit bot next. This is a no buff Poppy who's cleared 2 camps. And here she is ganking bot. And I think as well, Lemus did have the flash there, so maybe could have gotten out.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, really, I think. It's maybe he gets out, but maybe he just gets caught and loses Flash. I almost feel like it's worth just committing it because you don't want to give over the first blood, of course. And it went to Betty, and we saw how the game really went from there. But again, I want to talk about Bliss. I think coming into next week against CFO, you can feel quite a bit happier because CFO, as you touched on, we're on, I think it was a 7-game loss streak heading into playoffs. And that was losses against teams in the PCS that you suspect are weaker than Bliss, than Chiefs.
Sure.
Like, they should be. Like, Dewish team, they lost to Dewish team. And you have to imagine that, I imagine that Bliss is stronger than Dewish team. So you do feel a little bit more confident, honestly. And I think also the playstyle of Team Bliss should be good, really, into CFO because they're quite quiet. It's really Jimmian who is often trying to get them ahead, as well as Gemini. But Gemini hasn't been doing that recently, so it's really been on the back of Jimmian. And Daystar, I mean, you saw in that game, right? All of the games. Daystar did completely fine in his lane. He was 1-0 in this game, despite what it was looking like. And even in the Azir game, same scoreline, and found the only chance maybe that they could get back into it. So I think you can feel confident as Team Bliss next week when you're going up against CFO.
I think especially if you can get some stronger mid-jungle combos. You know, we're thinking of the likes of, you know, maybe the Maokai with the J, something like the Nico plus Vi, or Ari plus Vi, Syndra plus Vi, anything plus Vi, really.
The Chiefs Classic from last
split. Really. Just trying to get something more threatening that I think guarantees the mid-prior, allows you to spread that lead around and just punish the PCS teams for taking lots of fights, because one thing the PCS teams are very bad at is they will take fights oftentimes when they shouldn't. And so if you have a comp that is built also around not taking fights, well, the PCS are going to take their fights, you know, into you all the time. But if you do pick, you know, a lot of early game that still has scaling, right? You can pick something, again, like the Syndra Vi that honestly, while it has lots of early game threat, it scales pretty well too. You don't have to all in on the early game, I don't think. And that, I think, can give you a really good chance at winning some of these games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you cast your mind back to the last playoffs, it actually was just the Chiefs, they were down 2-0, and then they picked Nautilus Vi Syndra and just full R button onto AD carry, and it works. And honestly, as long as they're not Xayah, it completely works.
Much, yeah.
And those champions have scaling too. Of course, the Nautilus does fine at all stages of the game. Syndra noted for scaling pretty well, especially now with the changes that have come through. And Vi as well. I mean, obviously, yes, you're a bit stronger in the mid stage of the game, and later on you fall off a little bit, but you're still able to just press R on someone and do your job. And so I think that is a genuine angle that you can look towards, because the PCS are not the cleanest region. And so oftentimes, if you just have a more solid foundation for a team comp, you can just win that way. And I don't think you really get to see it when you have the likes of the Kazakhs or the Rengar.
No, I think that's very true. And I think another thing, I suppose, would... It felt like we didn't really see, I guess, I don't know, we saw a very different meta, I feel like. We didn't really get, you know, we didn't see a Maokai Sedge, admittedly was banned. We didn't see again, Annie Nico was banned. We didn't see the Jace Tristana either. So Bliss didn't really feel like they got any of those power picks and ultimately didn't get the win. But we will go into a quick break. I think after this we will have an interview with Vincent and I guess the victor, Betty. It'll be with Betty.
Welcome to our post-match interview. This is Nash, joining by Betty. Thank you for joining us and congratulations for the win. 我们的赛后采访邀请到的是 BYG 的 Betty，跟大家打个招呼。
大家好，我是 BYG 的 AD Betty。
It seems like you guys didn't sweat a clean sweep 3-0. What do you feel about your performance today? 就感觉你们好像没流什么汗就赢了，一个轻松的3-0横扫。那你怎么评价你们整队整体的发挥？
就是今天还算是有很多不太稳定的因素吧，就是没有赢得很干净利落，还有需要更多加强的地方。
It's your first time in your career to play against an LCO team. What aspect do you work on the most before the match? 就是你在这场比赛之前，其实你没有对过 LCO 队伍。那你对 TB 的这个歇赛之前，你有特别做什么准备吗？
就有特别去看了一下他们会选什么英雄吧，然后其实有点在1、2场的时候他选了个狮子狗，有点吓到我们，就算是我们比较不常见到的英雄。对。
Okay, so about your own performance, you play almost perfectly in this series, and you are also chosen as the series MVP. Oh, sorry. Betty said before the match, he and his team watched their games, and their Rengar pick actually surprised them a bit, but hopefully, but thankfully, it doesn't make any difference. Okay, and the next question: it's your first time playing against an LCO team. What aspect? Your own performance is nearly perfect, and you are also chosen as the series MVP by me. What do you feel about your own performance today? 就是你的个人的表现在这次的系列赛是非常出色。那我自己个人也觉得你是系列赛的 MVP。那你自己觉得你今天发挥怎么样？
今天发挥算是比较稳定吧，也还能再更好。就是我们整队发挥的，只能说还有很多需要进步的地方，在之后打到这一team需要调整的更多。
I think myself, I think it's fine, but as a whole team, I think we still have a lot of room to improve. So next match we'll going against J team. We have to be better to beat them. Okay, so the last question for you, just as you said earlier, you're going to play against J team the day after tomorrow. What do you think about this matchup, and what message do you want to send to J team? 就是诚如你刚刚讲的嘛，你们在后天就要对上 J team， 赢的话就可以进入胜部冠军赛。那你怎么看待你们这样的对局？那你有什么话想对他们说的？
就是如果就是我们后天对上 J team 嘛，然后我们会准备好打 J team 的 BP， 然后想办法赢下他们，然后想对 J team 说就是系好脖子等我们。
Okay, so for the game against them, I think we should work on our basics. That is the most important thing. If we can clean up our early game, our basics, we have a good chance. And for J team, I want to say to them, you watch your head and wait for us. 再一次感谢贝利接受我们的赛后采访，跟大家说声再见吧。
谢谢大家。
Okay, this is it for today's post-game interview. Let's go back to our caster desk.
Well, I think biggest takeaway there was BD played completely fine, but his teammates need to step it up.
That was so funny. He just actually base response.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I did fine, but we're going to need to step it up to beat JT. It was just a little flame towards the Annie, maybe in the mid lane. I think it was what, like 0-2 and 1, while the score was like 16-2.
He had the only 2 deaths on the team. To be fair, was just sitting in the side lane, and Bliss was like, what can we do?
Yeah.
All in the Annie.
He was the victim, really.
Yeah, really was. But, I mean, well played by Beyond, honestly. And as he said, I think J-Team going to put up a big amount of fight against them, because we said before the cast that their main weakness is that top side. Well, Driver is probably the best top laner in the league. That guy is crazy. And honestly, even if you are an LCO supporter and you're joining us, you are going to want to watch that game, because Driver is completely insane when it comes to top lane.
True.
Obviously, results here on your screen. It is the blue side. It actually wasn't the blue side. It was Beyond winning all the games. And
they did.
I think importantly, Bliss showed signs of life in that second game. And as Kongyue said, they didn't expect it. So maybe that's an avenue in to sort of find wins here in the PCS playoffs.
Could be. So that will be Beyond advancing to face J Team, which will be later in the week. We also have Team Bliss falling down a CFO, which will be played next week. And tomorrow's matchup is DCG versus Chiefs, which I think could be a really interesting one. And I think might even be, well, should be a lot closer than this one, I would expect. Not only because I feel like Chiefs are stronger than Bliss, obviously 3-0 them in the finals, but also DCG are a lot weaker than Beyond, I would say.
Yeah, I think that is an important thing to touch on because for pretty much the entire split, it really was Beyond J-Team and PSG were the very dominant forces in the PCS. And honestly, at times, it feels like DCG only got fourth because CFO went through some
turmoil.
Absolute, yeah. I don't know what happened to them, but they started the split like 8-2. So I was like, all right, that's our top 4. DCG made it into the top 4 simply because CFO did not play to God tone. We found out on Twitter, but it was really an implosion from their roster that unfortunately led to them falling down. And so I genuinely think that Chiefs probably stand a reasonably good chance here up against DCG.
I think so too. DCG are a team that, well, they've struggled a lot this split, both with finding consistency in their style. It really is. But also just like, you know, the champs they play and the way they close out games. Like, it's not unrealistic to see DCG with a giant gold lead and then manage to throw it over, whereas I feel like Beyond is not the team likely to do that. They might fall behind sometimes, but they often don't throw just because, you know, they've got Betty for that consistent win con. So I'm excited for tomorrow's match.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to touch on because Beyond got Betty as their win con. You'd imagine that Chris Carter would be the 80 carry, you know, from DCG should be the same, but he really isn't. Doesn't have the same amount of consistency or team fighting prowess that Betty does. They are very much an early game win and don't throw team. It feels like most of their games, if they win it, it's like early 30 minutes, late 20 minutes, and they've pretty much won the game. I mean, even some early 20 minutes is in there too. It's really off the back of Mission. And Kisei against Mission, maybe you'd favor Mission, but I don't think it's so one-sided that you just have to give it to DCG.
No, I don't think it'll be getting blown out of the water by any means, but I think Mission's picks are something that kind of needs to be dealt with, right?
Yeah.
Like, you'll oftentimes just pick up stuff like the Oriana and just because it's good for him.
Yeah, definitely. So Mission, very comfortable to pick what he wants, but that is going to be a game for tomorrow. For today, we have wrapped it up. It was a 3-0 in favor of Beyond. Of course, you can catch Bliss again next week and Beyond on, I believe it will be Sunday this week, so be sticking around for that. It's very exciting games here for the PCS playoffs.